Chapter 1320. Patriarch 3 Absolute's heart was crumbling. 3 months ago, he was the one who chased after Ji Tianxing and forced Ji Tianxing to enter the Nine Heavens platform. Back then, Ji Tianxing was not his match at all and was trampled on by him. But now, in a short span of 3 months, the situation of both sides had reversed. Right from the start, he was beaten back repeatedly by Ji Tianxing. He was in a sorry state, and his injuries were miserable. Ji Tianxing only used 2 moves to beat him until he was covered in injuries and vomiting blood. His heart was filled with grief and fury, but he had to admit a fact. Ji Tianxing's combat strength had surpassed his in all aspects. Damned little bastard, how can your strength increase by 7 or 8 times in a short 3 months? This doesn't make sense, it's impossible. Patriarch 3 Absolutes charged into the sky once more, glaring at Ji Tianxing with bloodshot eyes and roaring hysterically. His body was pitch black and emitted smoke. With a shake of his body, black ash would scatter. 5 kilometers away, Ji Tianxing stood above the sea and stared at him coldly. He sneered. Nothing is impossible. Common sense is meant to be broken. Back then, you chased me across half of the sinkhole and forced me here. Today, I'll let you have a taste of fear and despair. With that, he unleashed 100% of his strength and swung his sword fiercely towards Patriarch 3 Absolutes, who was 5 kilometers away. Sword-wielding stance. The world was shocked when the sword was unleashed. Sword chi spanning 30,000 kilometers. The burial of heaven slashed out a huge white sword light with hints of purple. It was 100,000 feet long and looked like a crescent moon. In that instant, the sea region was illuminated by a blinding white light. Clouds surged in the sky, and the sun and moon lost their light. Huge waves surged on the surface of the sea. An incomparably domineering and sharp sword chi spread out in all directions, forming an invisible storm. That crescent-shaped sword light was terrifyingly powerful, causing people to tremble in fear. Old ancestor Sanju's pupils constricted as a deep sense of fear flashed through his eyes. Without any hesitation, he used his secret technique to block with all his might, hoping to neutralize this sword technique. Both of his hands were forming strange hand seals, drawing arcs of golden light in the air as he condensed the seals at the fastest speed possible. In the blink of an eye, the thousands of golden light lines formed a seal with a radius of 10 miles. This seal was extremely ancient and complex. Ordinary soul refinement realm experts wouldn't be able to understand it at all. When the seal was formed, Forefather 3 Extremes let out a thunderous roar, mountain-suppressing command. Immediately, the seal lit up with a dazzling golden light, condensing into a huge golden mountain with a radius of 10 miles, smashing down towards Ji Tianxing from the sky. Boom! The crescent-shaped sword light collided with the 10 miles golden mountain in the sky, creating a loud explosion that shook the heavens. The incomparably heavy and majestic golden mountain looked very majestic, and its defensive power was super strong. However, this golden mountain only lasted for a moment before it was cut in half by the crescent-shaped sword light and shattered into pieces. Tens of thousands of golden fragments rained down from the sky, smashing into the sea below with a plop. The crescent-shaped sword light had already pierced through the sky and landed on Patriarch 3 Extremes. Bang! With a dull thud, Patriarch 3 Extremes was blown away once more as he vomited blood. A few more wounds appeared on his body, so deep that his bones could be seen. Blood constantly gushed out. His injuries had become even more wretched. He was now covered in wounds and blood, and his strength rapidly drained away. The violent power of lightning had already seeped through his body, passing through his charred skin and flesh to strike his meridians and bone marrow. In the blink of an eye, his meridians and bone marrow had been reduced to charcoal. As a result, his body was on the brink of destruction. Only his organs remained intact. No matter how furious and unwilling he was forced to accept reality. Right now, he could only be trampled on by Ji Tianxing. If this continued, Once Ji Tianxing used the fourth strike, his organs would be destroyed as well. His entire body would be destroyed. As a result, he could no longer care about his face and dignity. He immediately chose to flee. Swoosh! He unleashed all his strength and turned into a golden streak of light, flying away as quickly as he could. However, Ji Tianxing had expected him to flee. He had blocked the path ahead and waited for him. Soul Slash! Ji Tianxing roared coldly. He instantly released 7 soul magic swords and slashed at Patriarch 3 Extremes. The 7 soul magic swords were all dazzling white. They contained dense purple lightning and were surrounded by dazzling lightning. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The 7 soul magic swords danced rapidly, sealing off an area of 5 kilometers and drowning out Patriarch 3 Extremes. Although there were only 7 soul magic swords, they transformed into tens of thousands of sword lights, weaving into a huge sword net and crazily attacking Patriarch 3 Extremes. The Golden Dragon Emperor could not see the scene inside the sword net, but he could hear muffled bangs and Patriarch 3 Extremes' miserable cries. Seeing this scene, he immediately frowned. His pupils constricted, and a deep sense of shock surged from his eyes. Patriarch 3 Extremes has lived for 2,000 years. His strength has reached the half-step primordial soul realm. His cultivation is extremely profound and can be said to be invincible below the primordial soul realm. I really did not expect Ji Tianxing to be able to suppress him and trample on him so easily. This is too terrifying. Ji Tianxing is so young, yet he already has such a shocking strength. This kind of talent and aptitude is simply not seen in 10,000 years, and is rarely seen since ancient times. These thoughts flashed through the Golden Dragon Emperor's mind. He stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. In troubled times, such a peerless monster has appeared in the human race. This is really the Imperial Court's blessing, the human race's blessing. It's a pity that my son, Tai Yi, does not have such talent and cannot be compared to him. Otherwise, I can be at ease. Thinking of this, the Golden Dragon Emperor's heart surged with envy and regret. If his son could be as monstrous as Ji Tianxing, he would not have to worry about leaving the East Sea. Even if he died in battle in the northern desert, he would have no regrets. The Golden Dragon Emperor's imagination ran wild for a while before he came back to his senses. He saw that the sword net flickering with lightning had not dissipated and was still strangling Patriarch 3 Extremes. However, Patriarch 3 Extremes was no longer breathing. Not even a scream could be heard. He suddenly woke up from a dream, and his expression changed. Oh no, Patriarch 3 Extremes couldn't have been killed by Ji Tianxing, right? Thinking of this, he waved his palms without hesitation and struck out 2 golden dragon claws that blotted out the sky and the sun, grabbing at the huge sword net. Tianxing stopped. Although the sword net was extremely mysterious, it could not block the attack of a primordial soul supremacy. Crack! With a loud and clear sound, the 2 huge golden dragon claws tore the lightning sword net in half. Chapter 1321. Ji Tianxing was truly invincible below the primordial soul stage. Even a half-step primordial soul stage powerhouse like Patriarch Sanju was easily crushed and ravaged by him. However, he still did not know how far he was from a primordial soul stage powerhouse. Now, the Golden Dragon Emperor had made his move. With a domineering and forceful stance, he directly tore apart the sword net formed by his spirit sword technique. He could clearly feel that unparalleled, violent, and ferocious power. It was like a huge mountain that could not be shaken. It was obvious that there was still a huge gap between him and a primordial soul stage powerhouse. There was an insurmountable gap between them. After a while, the sword light that covered the sky dissipated, and Patriarch Sanju's figure appeared. Seeing his miserable state, the Golden Dragon Emperor could not help but gasp. His expression also became somewhat complicated. Patriarch Sanju's injuries were simply too terrible. His physical body had not collapsed, but it was completely black. His internal organs, flesh, blood, and bone had all been charred. Moreover, his 4 limbs had been chopped off. His entire body was covered in cracks and holes, like a sieve that was full of holes. The Golden Dragon Emperor sighed inwardly. With such injuries, his physical body is equivalent to a pile of trash. It's better to just destroy it. He knew very well that once a half-step primordial soul stage powerhouse like Patriarch Sanju's physical body was destroyed, the consequences would be extremely severe. Even if Patriarch Sanju went into seclusion to recuperate for a few hundred years, he could still reform his physical body and recover to his peak strength. However, his martial arts foundation was damaged, and it was very likely that he would not be able to reach the primordial soul stage. There was no hope for him in this lifetime. At this moment, Patriarch Sanju's physical body gradually collapsed. With a whoosh, it split open and turned into a large cloud of black dust that scattered from the sky. His physical body was completely gone. Only a ball of white spirit light was left, floating in the air in a daze. After a momentary daze, he flew toward the Golden Dragon Emperor and yelled in a panicked voice, "Your Majesty, save me! Save me!" The spirit voice transmission spread out and reverberated on the surface of the sea. His voice was filled with fear and despair. Ji Tianxing, however, waved his hand and executed a secret capturing technique. With a giant golden palm, he grabbed old ancestor Sanju's soul. The Golden Dragon Emperor's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly yelled, "Ji Tianxing, don't act rashly." As he spoke, he teleported before Ji Tianxing and stared at him with a dignified gaze. He growled, "I promised before that I would save Ancestor Sanju's life when he was in danger. This emperor is a man of his word. I will never go back on my word." Ji Tianxing nodded and revealed a playful smile as he said, "Your Majesty, how could I possibly allow you to be a person who betrays your trust? Don't worry, I won't kill old Ancestor 3 Absolutes. He won't die today either." Only then was the Golden Dragon Emperor reassured, and he nodded. "In that case, you can release him." Ji Tianxing shook his head, and his smile became even more playful. "I only promised not to kill him, and I also guaranteed that he wouldn't die. I never said I would let him go. You?" The Golden Dragon Emperor immediately frowned, and a bad premonition arose in his heart. "What do you want to do?" Ji Tianxing smiled but didn't answer. Instead, he executed a secret technique, and a dark purple lightning surged out his right palm and drilled into Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's soul. Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's injuries were too severe, and his strength was weak. Being corroded by the purple lightning, he couldn't resist at all. He even let out a shrill cry. Following a series of crackling sounds, Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's soul was wrapped in lightning. It became half white and half purple. It was very strange. His soul struggled violently for a long time before it gradually calmed down and stopped moving. The Golden Dragon Emperor was worried that Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes had been killed by the lightning, so he hurriedly checked the aura of his soul. Only then did he discover that he had only fainted. "Ji Tianxing, what are you doing?" He frowned at Ji Tianxing and asked in confusion. Ji Tianxing held Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's soul in his palm and explained with a smile, "Just now I used a long-lost ancient secret technique called the Wind Thunder Soul Devouring Technique. I implanted a bolt of Ninth Heaven Divine lightning into Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's soul. From now on, his life and death are under my control. No matter where he escapes, as long as I willed it, that bolt of Ninth Heaven Divine lightning will destroy his soul, and he will die completely. If he doesn't want to die, he can only listen to my orders obediently and become my servant." The Golden Dragon Emperor's pupils constricted, and a complicated expression appeared on his face. He sighed and said, "Although this method doesn't take his life, it's more ruthless than killing him." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a calm expression, "That's right. The way to take revenge doesn't necessarily have to be to kill people. Wouldn't it be more satisfying to turn your enemy into a servant or dog that you can order around as you wish?" The Golden Dragon Emperor looked at him deeply and said in a low voice, "You're so young, but your methods are so ruthless. In the future, you'll definitely achieve great things. However, why have I never heard of this ancient secret technique that you speak of? Ji Tianxing smiled and explained, this secret technique was a secret technique that very few people knew in the ancient times. It was very mysterious, and very few people knew it. However, you must have heard of another divine technique derived from the secret technique, and that is the soul demonic seed technique. The Golden Dragon Emperor's expression changed as he hurriedly nodded and said, "Of course I've heard of this evil secret technique. It's said that in the ancient times, many evil cultivators used this technique to plant demonic roots in the souls of powerful cultivators of various races. In the end, they completely turned into demons and became evil spirits, bringing disaster to the world. However, in the later stages of the ancient times, this secret technique was too evil and vicious. Countless powerful cultivators spurned it and encircled it. In the end, it was gradually lost." Ji Tianxing nodded and added, "You're right, that's indeed the case. However, the wind thunder soul devouring technique was originally a secret technique of the righteous sections. After it was learned by the evil cultivators, it was used and modified to become the soul demonic seed technique. In short, many cultivation techniques originally belonged to the righteous sects, but when they fell into the hands of evil cultivators, they were used to poison living beings and became evil cultivation techniques." The Golden Dragon Emperor gently clapped his hands, and a trace of admiration appeared in his eyes. He nodded and said, "That's right. Although you're young, you have such an understanding. You're indeed extraordinary. Today's matter is a personal grudge between you and Ancestor Sanju. As long as you don't kill him today, I won't go back on my word. As for how you deal with him, that's your own business. I won't ask about it, and I'll have a clear conscience." Ji Tianxing put away Ancestor Sanju's soul and cupped his hands to the Golden Dragon Emperor. "Many thanks for your Majesty's help. Since that's the case, this junior will take his leave." The Golden Dragon Emperor smiled and nodded. Now that the demon race is wreaking havoc in the human world, the world is in chaos. I'm sure you have an important task to attend to, so I won't invite you to the Dragon Palace as a guest. However, I'll remember the kindness you've shown my clan and will definitely return the favor in the future. Chapter 1322. Ji Tianxing rode on the little black dragon, flying high in the sky as fast as lightning. In just 10 short days, he left Ruin's End. He crossed the vast East China Sea and hurried back to the Central Plain. Along the way, he sat on the back of the black dragon as he silently thought about some things. It had already been over half a year since he and Yunyao left the Central Plain in search of the Neptunian god orb. In that half a year, he and Yunyao had faced countless dangers. They had almost lost their lives many times. However, they had made it through and even profited from the disaster. They had obtained many treasures, and their strength had increased drastically. Now, Yunyao was still in seclusion in the world within the sword. She was busy refining the Neptunian god orb. After all, she was refining the orb by herself. Her experience was still rather shallow, so it would take her a very long time. However, Ji Tianxing believed that her strength would definitely skyrocket once she refined the orb. Qianyu was also in the world within the sword. She had always been cultivating in seclusion. Ever since she underwent the heavenly tribulation and reached soul refinement, the innate talent and potential of the heavenly fox bloodline had been completely unleashed. The progress of its strength could be said to be changing with each passing day, rising with the tide, so fast that it made people speechless. Yunyao, the little black dragon, and Qianyu were all rapidly becoming stronger. To Ji Tianxing, this was something worth rejoicing over. He also felt happy for them. However, he remained calm along the way. His heart was filled with worry. He very much wanted to know how the situation of the continent had been in the half a year he had been away. What new developments and news had there been in the war between the three races and the demon army? Had the evil and powerful blood god massacred hundreds of millions of people of various races? Ji Tianxing was worried about the situation of the continent. So he got the little black dragon to hurry back as quickly as possible. A month later, the little black dragon crossed half of the East China Sea and returned to the profound sky continent. When he passed by the cities along the coast, Ji Tianxing paid special attention to the situation of the cities. He looked down from the sky and saw that the cities along the coast had recovered their peace. Most of the reconstruction had been completed as well. Without the blood god and the demon army causing trouble, the commoners had already recovered their peace. They had rebuilt their homes and lived prosperous lives. When he saw this scene, Ji Tianxing felt much more at ease. He didn't stop and continued to rush back to the central continent. He did not forget that when he was ambushed by Murong Zheng, the imperial tutor had personally come to stop him. Afterwards, the imperial tutor solemnly reminded him that he had to make a trip to the imperial court after returning to Zhongzhou. The emperor summoned him and wanted to discuss matters with him face to face. Ji Tianxing had always kept this matter at the bottom of his heart, silently guessing the emperor's intentions. Why did he summon him alone? What was it that the celestial emperor had to talk to him face to face? He remembered clearly that the last time he had seen the emperor was when he had been conferred the title of Heavenly Stellar Region Lord. Other than this kind of major event, he usually did not interact with the emperor. For the emperor to have the imperial tutor deliver a message personally, this matter is definitely not a small one. It's definitely an important one. But there aren't many things between the emperor and I. Perhaps it has something to do with the Son of Heaven, Long Yinxiao, Qin Xin, or the demon race? Could it be that the emperor has summoned me back to the imperial court to have me lead an army to the northern border to resist the invasion of the demon race? Ji Tianxing secretly speculated for a long time. He felt that all of these guesses were possible, but he could not be sure what this matter was. 1 month later, Ji Tianxing returned to the central continent. On this evening, the setting sun illuminated half the sky with its golden afterglow. Ji Tianxing rode the black dragon to the heavenly mountain range where the imperial court was located. The most majestic peak in the mountain range was Heaven Connecting Peak. Half of it was obscured by the setting sun, while the other half was obscured by white clouds. The palaces and buildings on the summit were faintly discernible in the clouds, and they were even covered in a layer of divine golden light. Ji Tianxing returned the black dragon to the sword world and landed alone halfway up the mountain. After more than 2 years, he had once more come to the imperial court of the human race. Even though he was now very strong and his horizons were much broader than before, he still maintained a reverence for the majestic aura of the imperial court. He showed the region lord's golden seal to the guards before being allowed to enter the imperial court. Then he followed the wide and straight divine path all the way to the summit. Not long after, he arrived at the summit and explained his purpose to the guards guarding the imperial court. The guard commander did not dare to delay. He hurriedly led him across the square and into the palace of heaven and earth. The sacred and dignified palace of heaven and earth was full of hidden sentries. The defense was very tight. The guard commander led Ji Tianxing to the imperial emperor's imperial study. He bowed and took his leave. Ji Tianxing tidied up his appearance before reporting in a loud voice. Region Lord Ji Tianxing of Tianjin has an audience with His Majesty the Imperial Emperor. In the spacious, bright, exquisite, and elegant study, a wisp of sunset passed through the window and shone on the jade floor, bringing a trace of warmth to the solemn and dignified study. There were several thick piles of memorials and official documents on the large purple jade table with dragon patterns. A simple and mysterious bronze incense burner was emitting green smoke in spirals. It emitted the fragrance of purple wood and jade sandalwood, making one's soul feel refreshed. The imperial emperor, who was wearing a golden dragon robe and a purple gold dragon jade crown, was sitting in front of the purple jade table. He was holding a memorial in his hand and frowning in deep thought. His body was tall, and his appearance was dignified. Between his brows, there was a righteous aura that could accommodate heaven and earth. Suddenly, he heard a voice outside the study. His thoughts were immediately interrupted, and he put down the memorial in his hand. Ji Tianxing, why did this brat take so long to come back? The imperial emperor muttered in a low voice. He frowned slightly and seemed to be a little dissatisfied, but his brows quickly relaxed, and his expression returned to normal. He said in a low and dignified voice, "Come in." Ji Tianxing, who was waiting outside, heard the imperial emperor's voice and pushed the door open to enter. He walked to the middle of the study and stood still. He bowed solemnly and paid his respects to the imperial emperor. Subordinate Ji Tianxing pays his respects to the imperial emperor. The imperial emperor did not answer immediately. He looked at him calmly and sized him up with a deep gaze. In just a moment, the imperial emperor saw the changes in him. He was completely different from 2 years ago. Not only was his aura stronger, but he also had the confidence and dominance of an expert. There was also a vast and mysterious aura. Moreover, the imperial emperor could clearly see that his strength had reached the 7th level of the spirit refinement realm. His dermic powers and divine spirit aura were comparable to a half-step essence soul realm cultivator. The imperial emperor was used to seeing great storms in his life. His temperament was like a deep well, calm and unperturbed. But now that he saw such a huge change in Ji Tianxing, his eyes widened. His eyes shone brightly, and his face was filled with surprise. "You brat. No wonder you delayed for so long before coming back to the imperial court to meet me. Tell me honestly, did you have a fortuitous encounter? If not, how could your strength improve by leaps and bounds and reach such a terrifying level?" At this moment, not only was the imperial emperor shocked, but his tone was also not as dignified as before. Chapter 1323. When Ji Tianxing saw the emperor's reaction, he wanted to laugh in his heart and felt a trace of pride. The emperor, who has always been aloof and incomparably dignified, would actually lose his composure like this. However, he knew that he couldn't hide his changes from the emperor, so he answered truthfully, "Your Majesty, to be honest, you are right." When the emperor saw his respectful attitude without a trace of resentment, he revealed a satisfied smile. Since that's the case, then this emperor won't pursue your crime of being late for a few months. You may rise." Ji Tianxing then stood up and looked at the emperor with a calm expression. He asked in a solemn tone, "May I ask what orders does the emperor have for this subordinate to be summoned back?" The emperor muttered to himself for a while before recovering his dignified face. He asked in a deep voice, "Ji Tianxing, let's not talk about this matter for now. This emperor has something to ask you. You must answer truthfully. Please enlighten me, Emperor." Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and bowed. He listened with a calm expression. The monarch stroked his beard and asked in a low voice, "You have a deep grudge with the Murong family. Murong Zheng tried to kill you on the way, and you were about to kill him to avenge yourself. However, this emperor sent the imperial tutor to stop you and prevent you from taking revenge. Have you ever resented this emperor in your heart?" Ji Tianxing was startled. He never thought that the emperor would ask him this question. Could it be that the emperor sensed my dissatisfaction and was afraid that I would be disloyal? So he tested me in person? This thought flashed through his mind, and he immediately became alert. He quickly answered, "Your Majesty, you are the emperor of my clan, the leader of millions of people. This subordinate is your subject. Of course, I have to follow your orders. How could I dare to complain?" However, the emperor didn't listen to his dignified words. He stared at him with a sharp gaze and asked, "You don't dare, or you don't?" After saying that, he added another sentence, "Think carefully before you answer. This emperor wants to hear the truth. If you have half a lie, you won't be able to hide it from this emperor." Ji Tianxing was even more confused. He did not know what the emperor's intentions were. However, he could sense that the monarch's soul energy was enveloping him, as if he could see through his heart. He knew that he couldn't hide it from the emperor, so he didn't try to explain himself and answered truthfully. Reporting to the emperor, this subordinate did have some complaints at first and was very unwilling. However, after the imperial tutor explained to this subordinate understood your difficulties and intentions. Naturally, the resentment in my heart dissipated. Even when this subordinate caused a huge disturbance in the central state, you didn't pursue the matter. Even if it caused the people to criticize me, you still wanted to protect this subordinate. After careful consideration, I understand that you naturally have your reasons and arrangements for doing so. The imperial emperor had been silent all this time. He stared at him, observing the changes in his expression and the fluctuations of his divine soul. After he finished speaking, the emperor concluded that he was not lying. Only then did his expression soften. That's right, Tianxing, it's naturally for the best that you can understand this emperor's intentions. Now, there's only you and this emperor in this study. Since you can tell this emperor the truth, it proves that this emperor can still trust you and can still entrust you with important tasks. When Ji Tianxing heard this, he knew that the emperor was just throwing a brick to attract Jade. The main topic was about to come. He cupped his hands and took the initiative to say, as the Tianxin region lord, this subordinate should serve the people. If the emperor has any important tasks, please tell me. This subordinate will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. The emperor glanced at him and said with a playful tone, Don't be so full of yourself. If this emperor gives you an important task now and asks you to go to the northern border alone to kill thousands of demons and protect the peace of our people, would you still dare to agree? Ji Tianxing slowly raised his head and looked directly at the emperor. His gaze was firm and unyielding. His voice was sonorous as he said a word. I dare. The emperor was stunned for a moment. Then, he raised his eyebrows and revealed a playful smile. You brat, I'm afraid you've had an amazing adventure. You're so confident and ambitious. Ji Tianxing shook his head and said in a serious tone, Your Highness, this has nothing to do with the adventure I've had. Even without your order, I will go to the battlefield and kill the demons. I'm not a saint, nor am I the ruler of a clan. I don't dare to dream of saving hundreds of millions of people. But this subordinate has a blood feud with the demons. I will never let them go. The emperor looked at him deeply and nodded solemnly, saying, Good, very good. Tianxing, I'm very pleased that you're so determined. However, the important task I'm going to give you today is not for you to go to the battlefield to kill the demons. You're the #1 genius of our clan, the most powerful person in the past 1,000 years. It's a waste to let you go to the battlefield to fight. Ji Tianxing's expression changed. He frowned slightly and asked, May I ask what you want me to do, Emperor? Go to a place and get an item. The Emperor showed a serious and solemn expression and said in a vigorous tone, A clan protection divine weapon. Get a clan protection divine weapon? Ji Tianxing was even more confused. He said in disbelief, What clan protection divine weapon? How do I get it? The Emperor raised his hand and signaled him not to be anxious. He said in a neither fast nor slow tone, Regarding this matter, I'll first tell you a story from the past. 10,000 years ago, in the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range in the south, there was an earth-shattering volcanic eruption. Endless fire covered tens of thousands of miles and dyed half the sky red. The tens of thousands of mountains in the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range turned into a sea of fire and scorched earth. Hundreds of thousands of people died because of this. Our clan's imperial court sent elite experts to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range to investigate the situation. After half a year, they finally found the shocking secret hidden in the depths of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. But after those experts entered the depths of the ground, none of them survived. They all died. This matter shocked the imperial court. The current emperor brought the empress and personally went to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range to investigate the reason. In the end, the emperor brought back a top primordial soul-level Dharma treasure from the depths of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. This item came from the ancient times and was refined by an ancient almighty. It has the power to burn the world. It's called the Celestial Godfire Cauldron. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing vaguely understood the emperor's meaning. He was instantly filled with curiosity and anticipation for the Celestial Godfire Cauldron. He didn't interrupt the emperor and continued to listen carefully. This cauldron can be called a peerless divine weapon. It's hidden in the depths of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. Because of its age, the power imbalance caused the volcano to erupt. In order to obtain that divine weapon, the empress was severely injured. After returning to the imperial court, she died in less than 100 years. The emperor spent decades of effort and used up all the imperial court's wealth to repair the celestial godfire cauldron and take it for his own use. However, the celestial godfire cauldron is too powerful and can't be stored in the imperial court for a long time. It must be nurtured in the dragon vein of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. Chapter 1324. After listening to the emperor's story, Ji Tianxing already understood the emperor's intentions. Emperor, you mean you want me to go to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range to retrieve the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron? The emperor nodded slightly and said solemnly, "That's right." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked, "Emperor, I have a question. The Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron has been stored in the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range since 10,000 years ago. Now that 10,000 years have passed, the thousands of experts guarding that divine artifact must have died long ago, right?" The emperor nodded again and explained, "Of course. However, I have not finished my story, so you have to listen patiently." "Please continue, Emperor." Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment before he quickly cupped his hands and continued to listen. The emperor continued, "Those thousands of experts have been guarding the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range to protect the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron. However, after the news was leaked, all the experts in the world knew about it, especially the experts of the demon race. They schemed to snatch the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron. After all, the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron was an ancient divine artifact with extremely strong and ferocious power. It was the nemesis of the demon race. Countless experts fought against the invaders in order to protect the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron and eventually died. The imperial court constantly sent out reinforcements, and generations of imperial court generals rushed to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. Until 1,000 years ago, when the demon race invaded, the ancient demon emperor sneaked into middle ground and massacred my people. I ordered the generals guarding the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range to retrieve the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron and escort it to the imperial court. I wanted to borrow the power of the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron to deal with the ancient demon emperor and get rid of the demon venomous insects. However, hundreds of generals and experts were intercepted by several demon marshals while escorting the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron, and almost all of them died. Fortunately, I arrived in time to protect the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron and used the power of the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron to kill several demon marshals and suppress the demon venomous insects. I'm sure you know what happened after that. I asked Kenshin for help. Kenshin chased after the ancient demon emperor and sealed him in Tianshan region. Hearing this, emperor's words, the Dipper Godfire Cauldron of the emperor had Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron the emperor. And he continued to listen to the emperor's Dipper God Cauldron. The generals guards to the Big Dipper, all the Dipper Mountain Ranges Dipper, the Big God Cauldron. On Big S, Dipper God, Dipper God, Dipper God, Dipper God. All of the guards have been sacrificed, so I sent a few of my trusted subordinates to be stationed in the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. In order to deceive the public, and in consideration of the long term, I ordered them to create a sect that will forever guard Sunless Peak and protect the heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron for generations. Now 1,000 years had passed. That sect was living in seclusion, and it was secretly reproducing and developing. It had already become a powerful force under the imperial court. The sect master has changed twice, but the secret of the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron is no longer known to the world, becoming an unsolved mystery. Ji Tianxing was surprised when he heard this. He nodded and praised. "Emperor, you are indeed meticulous. You plan ahead. This method is really unexpected. If a large number of generals are stationed at the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron, everyone in the world knows that it is where the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron is. But if it is a hidden sect, it can deceive people and successfully protect the secret of the Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron." The emperor revealed a gratified smile and nodded. "That's right. The Big Dipper Godfire Cauldron is the imperial court's clan guarding divine artifact. It can suppress the demon race and protect our people. How can it be lost? I have already inherited the imperial court's clan guarding divine artifact, the human sovereign sword. I can no longer sacrifice my divine soul to the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron and refine it into a life-guarding divine artifact. I have long planned to bestow the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron to Yun Xiao after he reaches the soul refinement realm and let him control this divine artifact. It's just that at present, the Fiend race army is sweeping the world once more, wantonly attacking the various races. Troubled times have already arrived. The situation is urgent. Time waits for no one. This emperor must take out the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron as soon as possible and entrust it to a suitable person. Only then can it unleash a greater effect. Therefore, this emperor deliberated for a long time and finally decided to entrust this clan-guarding divine artifact to you. Let you wield the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron and resist the Fiend race's invasion. But you have to personally head to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range's Sunless Peak and personally take out the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron. Only then can you obtain the divine cauldron's recognition. Ji Tianxing finally understood everything and knew the whole story. I didn't expect that I unintentionally snatched the divine artifact that should have belonged to Long Yun Xiao again. If this guy knew, he wouldn't bear a grudge against me, right? This thought flashed across in his mind, and he could not resist somewhat wanting to laugh. But this matter was the emperor's decision. He naturally had to abide by the decree. Even if Long Yun Xiao had any complaints, he could only blame it on the emperor and not on him. Collecting his thoughts, he bowed with a solemn expression and cupped his hands to the emperor. Thank you, Emperor, for bestowing me with the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron. If I wield the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron, I will definitely protect my people and territory with my life and fight the Fiend race to the end. The emperor nodded with satisfaction and said in a deep voice, "Here is a map of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. Take it and follow the map to find Sunless Peak. In addition, this emperor has already written a decree. Take it with you. When you reach the divine hidden sect, pass this decree to the sect master. She will naturally know what to do." With that, the emperor waved his big sleeve and shot out a ball of gentle golden light that flew in front of Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing reached out to take a look and saw that there were two scrolls in the golden light. The white scroll was the map, and the golden scroll was the emperor's decree. Tianxing, time is of the essence. Leave for the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range as soon as possible and retrieve the Big Dipper God Fire Cauldron as soon as possible. This emperor will be waiting for your good news in the imperial court. I hope everything goes well for you. Ji Tianxing did not say anything more and quickly put away the map and the decree. He cupped his hands and bowed. Tianxing obeys the emperor's order. After bowing, he turned around and left the imperial study. After he left, the emperor pondered for a long time in silence before he continued to review official documents and deal with important military matters. After Ji Tianxing left the Palace of Heaven and Earth, he passed through the square in front of the palace and walked down the mountain. Before coming to the imperial court, he planned to go back to Zhongzhou City to check on the situation of the imperial residence and Cloud Spirit Palace. But the emperor ordered him to hurry to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range as soon as possible, so he could only give up on this idea. Swoosh! After leaving the imperial court, he rode the black dragon into the sky and rushed to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range as fast as lightning. On the way, he calmed down and carefully recalled the emperor's words. Vermilion Bird Mountain Range, Sunless Peak, Hidden God Sect. Why do I have a sense of déjà vu when I heard these names before? He muttered the three words, Divine Hidden Sect, and frowned for a long time before he finally remembered. Chapter 1325. Shi Zhongjian was the simple and honest golden-haired youth who called himself the Prince of the Golden Lion race. When Ji Tianxing first entered the southern desolate swamp, he traveled with Shi Zhongjian to find the broken divine sword. They explored the Sin Dragon Pond and encountered an azure dragon. They even went through the Rainbow Forest and were ambushed by the spiritual insects race. In the end, they met the Earth Spirit race in Carefree Mountain and found the broken sword, the burial of heaven. The second time Ji Tianxing saw Shi Zhongjian was on the way to the Shao clan. At that time, Shi Zhongjian and his followers were attacked by two Soul Realm demon beasts. They were seriously injured and almost lost their lives. Ji Tianqing saved Shi Zhongjian's life and found that Shi Zhongjian had obtained the Azure Dragon from the Sin Dragon Pond. Now, he was going to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range to retrieve the heavenly handle god fire cauldron. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the sect that had guarded the divine cauldron for generations on Sunless Peak was actually the hidden god sect. This is too much of a coincidence. If this hidden god sect is Shi Zhongjian's hidden god sect, then I will definitely be able to see him again. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. Shi Zhongjian's simple and honest appearance appeared in his mind, and he couldn't help but smile. The Vermilion Bird Mountain Range was located in the southwest of Central State, between the human and demon territories. Even with the little black dragon's flying speed, it would take about 10 days to travel from the Imperial Court to the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. The Vermilion Bird Mountain Range was very vast and desolate. No one could be seen for many years. Without a map, ordinary martial practitioners couldn't enter the depths of the mountain range. Moreover, the terrain of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range was very steep, and there were many powerful demons and beasts. The environment was very dangerous. An expert like Ji Tianqing wouldn't be able to find Sunless Peak if he rashly entered the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range and wasn't familiar with the terrain. Moreover, he would encounter all kinds of trouble and danger. Therefore, he took out the map of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range given to him by the Emperor and carefully observed it for a long time. He memorized the entire map and engraved it in his mind before putting it away. Then, he placed the broken sword on the black dragon's back and entered the sword world. Yun Yao, Qian Yu, and the Jinshan King were all in seclusion in peaceful Soil City, constantly increasing their strength. However, Ji Tianqing did not enter the sword world to visit them. He flew above the city, crossing thousands of li of mountains and rivers. He arrived at the depths of the vast mountain range and stopped above a valley. This was a deep valley with a radius of 200 miles. The valley was filled with all kinds of strange flowers and plants and a dense forest. In the middle of the valley stood an ancient, dark green tree that was thousands of feet tall, like a giant peak. This ancient tree was incomparably huge. It was at least 300 feet thick. At first glance, one could tell that it was a spirit tree that had lived for thousands of years. Hundreds of thousands of branches extended from the treetop that was thousands of feet tall, and it was covered with green and translucent leaves. The vast canopy of the trees covered the entire valley within a radius of 200 miles. This astonishingly huge, ancient tree was actually the family treasure of the Duanmu family. It was a high-grade soul-level magic treasure, the Azure Light Treasure Tree. Ever since Ji Tianqing killed Duanmu Huang and obtained the Azure Light Treasure Tree, he rarely used this magic treasure. He only used it for healing. As his strength increased, the chances of him using the Azure Light Treasure Tree became fewer and fewer. But now, the Azure Light Treasure Tree had a new use and effect, because it had become Forefather Sanju's main body. More than a month ago, Ji Tianqing used the Wind Thunder Soul Devouring technique to control Forefather Sanju's soul, turning him into a slave. Unfortunately, Forefather Sanju's physical body had been destroyed, and only his soul was left. He could not unleash much power. If Forefather Sanju went into seclusion to recuperate and reform his physical body, it would take at least a few hundred years. This was obviously not realistic. Therefore, Ji Tianqing had a sudden idea to merge Forefather Sanju's soul with the Azure Light Treasure Tree. This way, Forefather Sanju would be able to possess his main body and recover his strength in a short period of time. Moreover, he would be able to unleash the power of the Azure Light Treasure Tree and possess powerful healing and recovery abilities. Once this method succeeded, Ji Tianqing would have a powerful slave with powerful healing abilities. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky above the valley and stared at the Azure Light Treasure Tree for a while before seeing the result. After more than a month of seclusion, Forefather Sanju had successfully merged with the Azure Light Treasure Tree. Now, The azure light treasure tree was Forefather Sanju, and Forefather Sanju was the treasure tree. The two had merged into one, complementing each other and becoming stronger. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing revealed a gratified expression and asked, Forefather Sanju, how is your cultivation going? Forefather Sanju was cultivating, trying his best to increase his strength. Suddenly hearing Ji Tianqing's voice, the entire treasure tree trembled and the thousands of branches rustled. Then, Forefather Sanju's voice came from the treasure tree, and his tone was filled with respect and fear as he said, Master, I have successfully merged with the treasure tree and recovered 80% of my strength. This old servant kneels and thanks Master for not killing me. Thank you, Master, for bestowing this old servant with the green light treasure tree as my body, allowing this old servant to benefit from this disaster and obtain a new life. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied with Forefather Sanju's reaction and asked despite knowing the answer, You were originally a half-step immortal soul stage expert, able to call yourself an ancestor overseas and live a carefree life. Now that you have become my slave, not only do you not have any complaints, you even want to thank me? Why is that? The treasured tree gently swayed its branches, bowed down, and made a respectful gesture, and answered, Master, this old servant had eyes but failed to see. I dare to provoke you, so I deserve to die. Master only needs a single thought to completely destroy this old servant. However, Master is benevolent and spare my life. This is a great favor. I'm still alive now, and with the azure light treasure tree as my body, I have a lifespan of tens of thousands of years. This is something I didn't dare to imagine in the past. Furthermore, Master, you are the #1 genius in the world. In the future, you will definitely be able to transcend the cage and enter the martial Tao's divine realm. I can follow you and serve you. In the future, I will have the chance to see a wider world. This is my lifelong dream. It is precisely because of this that I am grateful to you. The corners of Ji Tianqing's mouth curled up as he said in a playful tone, Forefather Sanju, there's no need to pretend with me. I won't fall for it. To tell you the truth, no matter how much you hate me, it's useless. Don't think that you can make me lower my guard by pretending to be loyal and obedient. You will have a chance to escape in the future. That's impossible. Don't even think about it. As long as my soul isn't destroyed, I can detonate the divine lightning with a thought and destroy your soul. Don't dream of dispelling that divine lightning unless you can reach the 9th tribulation realm. However, with me around, as long as I'm unwilling, you will never be able to reach that realm. Therefore, if you're smart enough, stay by my side obediently and be a loyal lackey. Chapter 1326. Ji Tianqing's words caused the azure light treasure tree to tremble. Clearly, these words were like daggers that stabbed deeply into Forefather 3's severing soul, causing his thoughts to churn. He fell silent for a long time before he gradually calmed down. Swish! Azure light surged out of the azure light treasure tree, quickly condensing into a figure that flew before Ji Tianqing. The figure condensed from green light was an old man in green robes. He looked exactly like Forefather Sanju. Although he was tall and burly, his aura was extremely gentle and reserved, just like an old butler. He bowed respectfully, then said to Ji Tianqing, Master, thank you for telling me the truth and dispelling those unrealistic fantasies of mine. Don't worry, Master. I understand your intentions. I won't dare to be disloyal in the future and will be absolutely loyal to you. Ji Tianqing glanced at him. Seeing the calmness after despair in his eyes, he nodded in satisfaction. It's good that you understand. In the past, you were Forefather 3's severing of the Heaven Evasion sect. Although you were domineering, you were shackled at the soul refinement realm and would never be able to reach the soul refinement realm. Now, you've fused with the azure light treasured tree and become my servant. To you, this is not only an unforeseen event, but also a fortuitous opportunity and fortune. Forefather 3 severing nodded and said emotionally, Everything that has happened in the past few months has been like a dream to me. I'll just treat it as a rebirth. From today onwards, I'm no longer Forefather 3 Severing. I'm just an old servant by your side. Don't call me Forefather 3 Severing. Just call me Asan. Asan? Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow and looked at him strangely. Forefather 3 Severing nodded calmly and explained, I've been an orphan since I was young. I was adopted by my master and brought to the Heaven Evasion sect to cultivate. After I became famous, I called myself Swordsman 3 Severing. 1,000 years later, I became Forefather 3 Severing. Ji Tianxing waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need to say anything more. Okay, then I'll call you Asan from now on. You can recuperate here. I'll call you when I need you. With that, he turned around and left. Farewell, master. Forefather 3 Absolutes stood in the air above the valley and bowed respectfully, sending him off with his eyes. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. That evening, Ji Tianxing entered the depths of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range and arrived at Sunless Peak. Looking down from high up in the sky, one could only see steep and lofty mountain ranges all around them. There was no end to them. A few enormous and majestic mountain ranges lay quietly on the ground like enormous dark brown dragons, bathing in the light of the setting sun. In the mountain range, there were many towering peaks that were thousands of feet tall, emitting an ancient aura. Ji Tianxing didn't know how long this mountain range had existed. However, judging from the degree of weathering of the rocks in the mountain range, at least tens of thousands of years had passed. The strange thing was that the temperature in the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range was very high. The closer one got to the depths of the mountain range, the hotter the air became. Especially near Sunless Peak, the air fluctuated invisibly, emitting a terrifyingly high temperature. Cultivators below the Sky Origin Realm couldn't stay in this area at all. If they stayed any longer, they would be roasted into charcoal. Of course, the mountain range in all directions was barren, and not a drop of water could be seen. All the mountain ranges and the ground were charred black. There were even dark red lava flowing in some low-lying valleys. There were also many mountain peaks that were emitting black smoke, and one could vaguely see flames flickering. Before Ji Tianxing came, the emperor had briefly introduced that there was a huge volcano hidden in the center of the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. Under Sunless Peak, there was a vast sea of lava hidden deep underground. Ji Tianxing didn't know why this mountain range was called the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. However, he knew that this was a world of fire, and the surrounding mountains were all called Flaming Mountains. Among the many mountain peaks, there was one that was the most majestic and tall. It was the Sunless Peak in front of him. It was 2,000 feet tall, covered an area of 400 miles, and was indomitable. There were no buildings at the foot of the mountain, and it didn't have a plaza like ordinary sections. It was surrounded by deep valleys and mountain streams, and there was only a mountain gate at the waist of the mountain. The mountain gate wasn't big, only 10 feet tall and 10 feet wide. It looked small and low-key. However, there was a stone tablet beside the mountain gate that was engraved with the words Hidden God Sect in dark gold. The writing was like dragons and snakes, and it was majestic. Behind the mountain gate, there was a 5-step wide black stone staircase that zigzagged and extended to the peak of the mountain. On the peak of the mountain, there was a flat land with a radius of a few dozen miles. There were a dozen palaces and courtyards, and they were all very simple and unadorned. Looking from afar, those palaces and courtyards didn't look splendid and dazzling, and they didn't have a sacred and honorable aura. In general, the Hidden God Sect looked very low-key, simple, and weathered, just like an ordinary second-rate sect, and not like a grand and magnificent top sect. Ji Tianxing looked at Sunless Peak from top to bottom and saw some clues. He revealed a playful smile. The Hidden God Sect hid so deeply and kept such a low profile. It is indeed a wise move. Even if the experts of the various races are looking for the Divine Cauldron, they wouldn't care about the Hidden God Sect, and they wouldn't associate the Divine Cauldron with this ordinary sect. He secretly admired the people of the Hidden God Sect for their wisdom and forbearance. Swish! He put the little black dragon into the sword world and descended from the sky, landing outside the mountain gate at the waist of the mountain. Then, a green light flashed beside him, and an old man wearing a green robe appeared. It was Old Ancestor Sanju. Old Ancestor Sanju obediently followed behind him and walked towards the mountain gate of the Hidden God sect. It was empty outside the mountain gate, and there was even a layer of dust on the ground. When Ji Tianxing walked to the foot of the mountain gate, a sloppy old man wearing a gray robe and carrying a wine gourd walked out of a stone house at the side. This old man's body was stooped, and his long hair was messy and tangled. His gray robe was also greasy and tattered. He carried a green-skinned gourd in his hand, and his whole body reeked of alcohol. His nose was also red, and he looked exactly like an old drunkard. "Hey, kid, stop right there." The old drunkard carried the wine gourd, and his figure flashed in front of Ji Tianxing, blocking his way. His footsteps were a little staggered, and his body swayed as he walked a few steps. He sized up Ji Tianxing with his eyes, and then shouted, "Kid, what are you doing? Why are you trespassing on Sunless Peak?" Without waiting for Ji Tianxing to speak, Old Ancestor Sanju took 2 steps forward and shouted with a dignified voice, "Impudent! You sloppy old drunkard! How dare you be disrespectful to my master? My master is the Honorable Heavenly Stellar Region Lord, and he came to the Hidden God sect on the orders of the human race's emperor to discuss important matters. Why aren't you moving out of the way? If you delay the important matters, how can you bear the responsibility?" Old Ancestor Sanju's voice was stern, and as he spoke, he released an invisible divine soul aura that suppressed the old drunkard. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been scared out of their wits and knelt down to greet him. But that old drunkard only quivered and immediately sobered up, his eyes becoming deep and bright. Chapter 13:27. Ji Tianxing found it strange just now. Why would the Hidden God sect make such an arrangement? Even if they didn't send a large number of experts to guard the sect, they shouldn't have let a sloppy old drunkard guard the sect, right? Now, the old drunkard had blocked Old Ancestor Sanju's divine soul pressure without retreating half a step or showing the slightest fear. Only now did he understand that the old drunkard was a hidden expert. He secretly released his divine soul power and discovered that the old drunkard's strength had reached the 9th level of the soul refinement realm. Moreover, the old drunkard's cultivation was abnormally deep and was not inferior to the current Old Ancestor Sanju. No wonder the Hidden God sect is so desolate with only one old drunkard guarding it. With him here, it's comparable to an army of thousands. As long as it's not a primordial soul supreme, it's impossible to barge in. This Hidden God sect seems to be low-key and even a little declining, but they have such wisdom and courage. It's really unbelievable. These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind, and he finally understood why the emperor trusted and valued the Hidden God sect so much. At this time, the old drunkard raised his head and drank a mouthful of wine with his green calabash in hand. The strong smell of wine seeped out and actually contained a strong divine soul power, causing one's divine soul to be in a daze. His dark face flushed red as he glanced sideways at Old Ancestor Sanju and Ji Tianxing. He sneered, "Ha ha! It's a good thing that an esteemed guest has come, and our sect should treat you warmly. However, our sect is not receiving guests today, and from ancient times until now, we have never received rude guests. Please go back, don't spoil this old man's mood." The old drunkard's breath reeked of alcohol as he said these words drunkenly. As his voice fell, he casually drew a line with his left index and middle fingers, creating a deep ravine on the stone floor beneath his feet. This 1-meter-long ravine separated him from Old Ancestor Sanju. His meaning was clear. If Ji Tianxing and Old Ancestor Sanju dared to take half a step forward, he wouldn't be polite. Seeing this, Old Ancestor Sanju immediately frowned and shouted with a cold expression, "You old drunkard, you're really unreasonable. I must teach you a lesson." As he spoke, Old Ancestor Sanju raised his palm and was about to attack. "Asan." Ji Tianxing waved his hand, indicating for Old Ancestor Sanju to leave. Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's body trembled. He hurriedly suppressed his anger and surging magic power and obediently retreated to the side. Ji Tianxing took 2 steps forward and calmly looked at the old drunkard. He took out the mountain and river seal and said, "Senior, please forgive my servant for offending you earlier. I am Ji Tianxing, the leader of the Tianjin region. Today, I am here to visit your sect under the order of the Emperor. I would like to discuss an important matter with your sect leader. Please pass on my message." He announced his identity and flashed his identity token. He expressed his intentions to the Hidden God sect in a formal manner. In his mind, the old drunkard was a martial expert. He would know what was important and wouldn't dare to make things difficult for him. But he didn't expect that the old drunkard would glance at him and didn't even bother to look at the seal in his hand. He waved his hand and said, "Young man, who you are and who you're following has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my sect. My sect is a small sect that lives in seclusion. We have always avoided the world and never participated in worldly disputes. We have nothing to do with the imperial courts of the various races. Please go back and don't stay here. Otherwise, I will have to chase you out." Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and stared into the old drunkard's eyes. He asked in a deep voice, "Senior, are you serious? You have to consider the consequences." The old drunkard glanced at him and drank a mouthful of wine. He sneered mockingly, "Are you threatening me? Ha ha! Young people nowadays are so arrogant and lawless." Finished speaking, he carried his wine gourd and staggered back into the sect. He returned to his stone house and lay down. At this damned old drunkard, Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was so angry that his face turned ashen. He frowned and was about to chase after the old drunkard. Ji Tianxing waved his hand. Only then did he stop and retreat. He looked at Ji Tianxing with a puzzled expression and asked, "Master, is this old drunkard's brain muddled? Or is he pretending to be muddle-headed? Does he dare to disobey the orders of the imperial court?" Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment. He shook his head and said, "When he said those words just now, I saw that his eyes were clear and his soul fluctuations were normal. He didn't seem to be lying. This means that this old drunkard probably doesn't know." Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was even more puzzled and asked back, "Even if the Hidden God sect is deliberately hiding it, the old drunkard is a top expert. How could he not know about the relationship between the Hidden God sect and the imperial court?" Ji Tianxing said calmly, "Not necessarily. This old drunkard is just a gatekeeper, not an elder or sect master of the Hidden God sect. It's possible that he doesn't know." Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes thought for a moment and felt that it made sense. He couldn't help but ask, if a gatekeeper is so strong, how strong is the Hidden God sect? Could it be that they have a primordial spirit realm expert overseeing them? That's possible. Ji Tianxing nodded. Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes thought for a moment and asked, "Master, what do you plan to do? You don't know who the sect master of the Hidden God sect is, and you can't contact him. Are we going to be stopped by the old drunkard and have to wait here?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and showed a playful smile, saying, "There's no need for that. I have my ways." After saying this, he rummaged through his interspatial ring for a while and quickly found a communication jade slip. He inputted a message into the communication jade slip and released the jade slip. Whoosh! The jade slip turned into a stream of light and flew into the sky, immediately disappearing. Old Ancestor 3 Absolute saw this and asked doubtfully, "Master, what are you?" Ji Tianxing smiled and explained, "A long time ago, I met an upright and brave young man who happened to be a disciple of the Hidden God sect. When I went to the Shao clan and saved his life on the way, he gave me 2 communication jade slips and told me to contact him in the future. It just so happened that they came in handy today." Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes came to a realization and silently stood to the side, not saying anything more. The two waited for 100 breaths of time at the mountain gate before they saw a dazzling light of true essence on the mountain peak. In the next moment, a young man in white robes, riding a 1,000-meter-long, dark gray flood dragon, charged over at lightning speed. Whoosh! In a short 2 breaths of time, the gray flood dragon rushed to the mountain gate and stopped in front of Ji Tianxing and Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes. The violent wind brought by the flood dragon blew the sand and stones under the mountain gate, and dust filled the sky. The white-robed young man didn't care at all. His face was flushed with excitement as he hurriedly jumped off the dragon's back. Chapter 13:28. This white-robed, tall, and sturdy young man with a head full of golden hair was Shi Zhongjian. The flood dragon he was riding was the azure dragon he obtained from the evil dragon pool. Shi Zhongjian's face was flushed with excitement as he looked at Ji Tianxing with sparkling eyes, rubbing his hands excitedly. Ji Tianxing looked at him and saw that he had changed a lot. He couldn't help showing a gratified smile and nodded. "Lion, I haven't seen you for half a year. You've changed a lot." Shi Zhongjian became even more excited after receiving his praise and nodded repeatedly. "Big Brother Tianxing, you flatter me. This is all thanks to Brother Dragon. It has helped me a lot in my cultivation." At the mention of the Azure Dragon, Shi Zhongjian was eloquent and eloquent. Ji Tianxing understood his temperament, so he patiently listened to him. After a while, Shi Zhongjian gradually calmed down and remembered to ask about proper business. "Big Brother Tianxing, our hidden god sect is hidden deep in the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. Without a map, it would be difficult to find it. How did you find this place? Did you come here just to see me?" "Of course not." Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. Shi Zhongjian's eyes flashed with a touch of disappointment, but he immediately let it go and laughed at himself. "Like I said, Big Brother Tianxing is a peerless genius and a noble person. You have too many things to deal with on a daily basis. How would you have time to visit me?" "Big Brother Tianxing, what business do you have at Sunless Peak?" Ji Tianxing calmly explained. "I came here on the Emperor's order to find the sect master of the Hidden God sect to discuss an important matter." "Ah, what Emperor?" Shi Zhongjian frowned and scratched his head, asking doubtfully, "Why did the Emperor ask you to find our sect master?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and instructed, "This matter is of great importance. It's not convenient to talk about it here. Let's go in first, and I'll explain it to you later." Shi Zhongjian didn't doubt it and quickly nodded. "Okay, then let's go in first. Big Brother Tianxing, this is your first time visiting our sect, so you must stay for a few days. Let me treat you well." With that, Shi Zhongjian led Ji Tianxing and Forefather 3 Absolutes through the mountain gate and towards the peak of the mountain. The old drunkard in the stone house immediately jumped out and pulled Shi Zhongjian's sleeve. "Little lion, what are you doing?" Shi Zhongjian bowed to the old drunkard and said with a smile, "Old man, this is young Master Ji Tianxing, the #1 genius of the continent, the youngest imperial prince and realm lord. He is also my great benefactor. Not only did he save my life, he also taught me many things. I've been thinking about when I'll be able to meet Big Brother Tianxing again. I didn't expect him to really come looking for me." Old drunkard frowned slightly and subconsciously glanced at Ji Tianxing, a hint of surprise flashing his eyes. However, his expression immediately returned to normal. He nodded to Shi Zhongjian and said with a smile, "Since that's the case, you have to treat him well. Don't neglect your esteemed guest." With that, old drunkard carried his wine gourd and went back into the stone house. Ji Tianxing glanced at old drunkard and followed Shi Zhongjian to the peak of the mountain. Along the way, he asked with a voice transmission, "Lion, who is this old drunkard? Why would such a powerful expert be reduced to such a sorry state and have to guard the mountain gate?" Shi Zhongjian was stunned for a moment. Then he withdrew the smile on his face and said with a complicated tone, "This old man was once the left protector of our sect. When he was young, he was also elegant and very dignified. However, he had always loved our sect leader and was infatuated with her for 300 years. Finally, one day, he couldn't help but confess his feelings in front of others. He was heartlessly rejected by the sect leader and was punished. Since then, the left protector resigned from his position as protector and volunteered to guard the mountain gate. He drank himself to death every day." Hearing Shi Zhongjian's words, Ji Tianxing suddenly opened his eyes wide. He quickly interrupted him and asked, "Wait a moment, old drunkard. He actually fell in love with your sect leader? This is too ridiculous, isn't it? Is his taste so heavy? Yes. Sure, Zhongjin nodded and said with a sigh, how could a protector of our sect fall in love with the sect leader? Isn't this going against the rules? Of course, the sect leader would reject him. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, sympathetically, he's a soul refining realm cultivator after all. I can't believe he has that kind of fetish. He even dared to confess his feelings in front of everyone. No wonder he became so sloppy. However, he is also very infatuated. Even though he was rejected by the man he loves, he still stayed in the hidden god sect to guard the sect. This time, it was sure Zhongjin's turn to be stunned. He stared blankly at Ji Tianxing and said with a strange tone, wait a moment. Big brother Tianxing, are you mistaken? Mistaken about what? Ji Tianxing asked subconsciously. Sure Zhongjin lowered his voice and said with a strange tone, our sect leader's surname is Shui. She is a woman. A woman? Ji Tianxing was also stunned. His expression became very strange, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sure Zhongjin stared at him with wide eyes and said blankly, what do you think? This misunderstanding was too big. Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes, who was standing at the side, heard everything clearly and almost burst out laughing. However, he kept his head down and his shoulders trembling. It was obvious that he was having a hard time holding back his laughter. An hour later, Ji Tianxing and Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes settled down in the hidden god sect. The mountain peak was vast, and there were 16 palaces and courtyards in total. It could accommodate 3,000 people. However, there were only a little more than 1,000 people in the hidden god sect, including the disciples, servants, and guards. Therefore, the palaces and courtyards were very quiet and secluded. Shi Zhongjian arranged a small courtyard for Ji Tianxing. After Shi Zhongjian helped Ji Tianxing settle down, he sat in the living room with Ji Tianxing, drinking tea and chatting. Ji Tianxing didn't want to waste time and went straight to the point. Lion, I came to the hidden god sect this time for an extremely important matter. I want to see your sect leader as soon as possible. I remember you said that you were the second disciple of the hidden god sect. You should be able to see the sect leader, right? Sure, Zhongjian hesitated and frowned. He explained awkwardly, Big brother Tianxing, I know that you have something important to do. If I can help you, I will definitely do it. However, Lord Sect Leader has always been mysterious and rarely shows herself. The sect's affairs have always been managed by the Great Elder and my master. In the past 10 years, I have only seen Lord Sect Leader once. It is said that Lord Sect Leader has always been in secluded cultivation. Even if I want to help you, I'm afraid that I won't be able to see her. Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with disappointment. However, he immediately had an idea and said, if that's the case, then take me to see your master. I will tell her the whole story and let her pass it on to your sect leader. Chapter 1329. Shi Zhongjian immediately fulfilled his promise and brought Ji Tianxing to see his master. His master was the second elder of the hidden god sect, a soul refinement realm expert who had cultivated for 400 years. The second elder doted on Shi Zhongjian very much. When she learned that Shi Zhongjian had something to discuss with her, she immediately put down whatever she was doing and received him and Ji Tianxing in the living room. When Ji Tianxing saw the second elder, he realized that she was a middle-aged woman. She looked graceful, elegant, and kind. The two exchanged greetings, and when the second elder learned of Ji Tianxing's identity, she was very grateful to him. After all, Shi Zhongjian had already told the second elder about his adventure with Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing exchanged a few pleasantries, and then told the second elder the reason for his visit. Second elder, I am here on the orders of the emperor to discuss an important matter with your sect master. Unfortunately, your sect master is very secretive, so I would like to ask the second elder to help me pass on a message. The second elder nodded slightly and said in a gentle voice, Young Master Ji, if this old woman can help with this matter, I will definitely do so. But please understand that our sect master is in secluded cultivation and cannot be disturbed. Can you please tell this old woman why the emperor of the human race sent you here? If the matter is very urgent, this old woman can only pass on the message to Lord Sect Master. Otherwise, this old woman cannot rashly disturb the Sect Master's cultivation. Ji Tianxing saw the second elder's expression and guessed that she didn't know either. Sigh, the hidden god sect has hidden this matter very well. Even Elder Lien Heir doesn't know that the hidden god sect is a subordinate force of the emperor. What should we do now that the sect master of the hidden god sect is in secluded cultivation? Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and sighed in his heart. After a moment of silence, he looked at the second elder with sincere eyes and said in a serious tone, "Second elder, your sect is a hidden sect and has always been in seclusion. Perhaps you don't know the significance of the emperor's decree of the human race's emperor. However, I have to tell you that this matter is of utmost importance. It is even related to the fate and survival of the hidden god sect. As long as you seek an audience with your sect master and tell her that the emperor has sent someone here with a decree, she will definitely know what to do." Hearing how serious Ji Yunshu was, the second elder was shocked. His eyes widened, and he said in disbelief, "Young Master Ji, don't be an alarmist. I swear on my head," Ji Tianxing said solemnly. The second elder stared at him for a while before nodding. "All right, this old one is willing to believe young Master Ji this once. Young Master Ji, please go back and rest. This old one will inform the sect master as soon as possible." Ji Tianxing was very clear that the second elder was only temporarily pacifying him. He definitely couldn't make a decision on his own and would have to discuss it with the great elder. However, he couldn't say anything more. He could only get up and leave. By the time he returned to his courtyard, it was already late at night. Shi Zhongjian carried 2 pots of wine and excitedly ran over to drink with him, but he was stopped by him. Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was also put into the sword world. He sat alone on the roof, bathing in the faint starlight and moonlight. He overlooked the entire Sunless Peak and the vast mountain range around it. Under the curtain of night, Sunless Peak was exceptionally quiet and serene, as if it had been forgotten by the world. There was a strong sense of loneliness and desolation. Ji Tianxing suddenly understood. No wonder Shi Zhongjian's personality was so simple, so sincere and passionate to others, and even a little silly at times. He lived on Sunless Peak for many years and had almost no contact with the outside world. Naturally, he could maintain a simple personality and treat others with sincerity. Even in the darkness of the night, the vast mountain range around Sunless Peak was still emitting smoke and flames from time to time. In the deep ravines and mountain streams in the distance, there were also streams of dark red light flowing. That was magma overflowing from the ground. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought silently. It seems that other than the sect master of the hidden god sect, no one else knows about the relationship between the hidden god sect and the imperial court, much less the existence of the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron. I don't know how long it will take for second elder to report this to sect master Shui. If that's the case, I can only think of another way and go find it myself. Finished speaking, he returned to his room and sat down. He closed his eyes and released his soul power, extending it in all directions to explore the entire Sunless Peak. His soul power was like an inescapable net that covered the entire Sunless Peak. Soon, the dozen or so palaces and mansions on the mountain peak, as well as the bricks and stones on the mountain peak, were clearly imprinted in his mind. He could clearly detect that there were 5 soul refinement realm experts and dozens of heaven origin realm experts in the palaces and mansions. Among these experts, the old drunkard guarding the mountain gate was the strongest. Ji Tianxing was a little puzzled. He repeatedly checked several times, but the result was still the same. The sect master of the hidden god sect is definitely stronger than the old drunkard. She is most likely a supreme expert of the primordial spirit realm. But I have searched the entire Sunless Peak and did not detect the aura of a supreme primordial spirit realm expert. It seems that sect master Shui is not on Sunless Peak. But if she is not on Sunless Peak, where could she be cultivating in seclusion? Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind, and he had a guess. That's right, deep underground. The Imperial Emperor once said that there is a vast sea of magma deep in the Earth's core under Sunless Peak. That heavenly dipper god fire cauldron is sleeping in a magma sea. Could it be that sect master Shui is cultivating deep underground? Or is she guarding the divine cauldron personally? After this thought appeared in his mind, he impatiently manipulated his soul power to pass through Sunless Peak and explore deep underground. With his current strength, his soul power could cover 100 miles. He was confident that his soul could extend 100 miles and explore the situation deep underground. However, when his soul passed through Sunless Peak and extended 80 miles, it was blocked by a layer of dark red barrier. That layer of dark red barrier was like a curtain of flame that stretched across the rock layer underground. He tried a few times, but he could not break through the barrier and see the situation deep inside. Moreover, that barrier covered an area of 100 miles. It was so wide that it seemed boundless. Ji Tianxing was helpless. At the same time, he was even more certain that Sect Master Shui was very likely deep underground. He thought for a moment, then got up and left the small courtyard. He personally entered Sunless Peak and dived deep underground. In order to not be discovered by the elders of the Hidden God sect and cause unnecessary misunderstandings, he was very careful. He restrained his soul aura and slowed down his diving speed. It took him half an hour to reach 80 miles underground. It was pitch black all around, and there were scorching rock layers everywhere. The temperature underground was extremely high. Even those hard rocks that did not melt had a hint of dark red. Ji Tianxing slowly approached the dark red barrier and prepared to observe that mysterious barrier. But at this moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded behind him. Chapter 1330. Ji Tianxing was about to take a closer look at the mysterious dark red light screen. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. The voice was cold, and the tone was full of mockery. He subconsciously turned his head and saw a black figure standing in a rock crack 100 steps behind him. Near the dark red light screen, there were wide rock cracks and holes. They seemed to be traces left behind by a volcanic eruption. Ji Tianxing was also standing on a rock, frowning as he sized up the figure. It was a sloppy man with knotted hair. His clothes were greasy and full of holes. There was no doubt that it was the old drunkard who was guarding the mountain gate. However, he was not holding a wine gourd at the moment, nor was he as drunk as he was during the day. His eyes were clear and bright, and his body was no longer hunched. He was actually emitting an invisible and powerful aura. At this moment, he was no longer a sloppy drunkard. He had truly recovered the aura and majesty of a top expert. He stared at Ji Tianxing with a fierce look in his eyes, sneered and said with a cold tone, "I've long known that you, little rascal, tried every means to sneak into our sect because you're up to no good." This old man was right. You sneaked into our sect's forbidden area in the middle of the night on your first day in our sect. How audacious! As he spoke, he released an invisible spiritual pressure that pressed down on Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was indifferent. He looked at him calmly and asked, "With my strength, it is impossible for you to get within 300 meters of me without making a sound. How did you do it?" "Ha ha ha, you don't need to know." The old drunkard sneered disdainfully. "This old man is an expert at the 9th level of the soul refining realm. How can I not have secret techniques and consummate skills? Moreover, this is Sunless Peak. This old man has lived here for hundreds of years. I am very familiar with every brick and stone here." Ji Tianxing nodded and stopped asking about this matter. He said with a calm expression, "I know. Even if I told you that I have no evil intentions towards the Hidden God sect, and that I'm only doing this because of an emergency, you wouldn't believe me, would you?" "Umph." Old drunkard pursed his lips and sneered. Ji Tianxing nodded again, spread out his hands, and said, "If that's the case, then there's nothing more to say. Let's fight." The old drunkard frowned and shouted in a deep voice, "Kid, you're up to no good. You've been caught red-handed by this old man, yet you don't have the slightest intention of remorse. You still dare to be so arrogant? I have a clear conscience. Why should I repent? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "How stubborn?" Old Drunkard scolded angrily. He pointed behind him and said, "This old man can see that you're a talented man with decent strength. If you have the guts, then fight with this old man outside. Don't hurt the innocent disciples of our sect." Ji Tianqing naturally nodded in agreement. "Of course, I have no ill intentions towards the hidden god sect. I do not wish to harm anyone." "Hypocrite!" Old Drunkard snorted coldly again, turned around, and flew out. The two of them were like lightning, shuttling through the ground at high speed. After a short 10 breaths, the two of them left Sunless Peak and flew towards the mountains in the distance. After 100 breaths, the two of them flew 300 miles before Old Drunkard stopped in the air above a valley. "Kid, let's fight here. It won't affect our sect. Since you're young, this old man will let you make the first move." Old Drunkard put his left hand behind his back and waved his right hand, making a pleased gesture. He had the demeanor of a master. Ji Tianqing stared at him and said calmly, "Senior, I don't want to hurt you, so let's stop here. Moreover, I don't want to alarm the elders and disciples of your sect. If you want to leak information, then don't blame me." Old Drunkard immediately grinned and sneered. "Ha ha, kid, weren't you quite rampant just now? Now that you have a guilty conscience, why are you still afraid of being found out? This old man will take you down and hand you over to our sect's elders to be punished according to our sect's laws." Ji Tianqing frowned and cupped his fists, saying, "If that's the case, then I can only offend you." As his voice fell, he did not give Old Drunkard any time to react and drew his broken sword as fast as lightning. "Draw your sword." With the pitch-black broken sword in hand, a blazing white sword light with a tinge of purple instantly slashed out. It cut through the dark night and slashed towards Old Drunkard. "You're really something." Old Drunkard's expression changed and his eyes flashed wildly. Without hesitation, he took out his wine gourd and released an incomparably vigorous dermic power into the wine gourd. Swoosh! The green-skinned gourd suddenly expanded and became a huge gourd over 100 feet tall, emitting a soaring green light. The dazzling sword light slashed at the green gourd with a loud bang, and a loud muffled sound was heard. The green light that filled the sky was shattered and splashed in all directions, illuminating the night sky for hundreds of miles. The wine gourd was blasted away and smashed into a mountain dozens of miles away. The barren 10,000 feet tall mountain was smashed into pieces on the spot, collapsing into scorched earth and ruins all over the ground. In the ruins, flames and black smoke rose into the sky. An endless cloud of dust burst out, covering the night sky within a radius of tens of miles. After the sword light blasted the green gourd away, it did not shatter and slash towards Old Drunkard again. Old Drunkard's expression changed drastically. He raised his palms and condensed 2 huge green palms, trying to clamp down on the sword light that was hundreds of feet long. However, with a loud bang, the huge green palm was smashed into pieces. Old Drunkard was also sent flying, rolling, and crashing into the valley. A huge crater was formed in the deep valley. Dust flew everywhere and flames soared into the sky. Ji Tianqing did not chase after him. He stood in the sky and looked down. After a while, Old Drunkard rushed out of the crater and flew back into the sky. His body was charred and his clothes were full of holes. More than half of his hair was curled, and his face was covered in ashes. He looked very miserable. "Boy, I really underestimated you. However, I'm going to use my real strength now." Old Drunkard shouted angrily. With a flash of green light in his palm, a dark green sword appeared. He held the dark green sword with both hands. His body burst out with energy and his robe fluttered fiercely. A sword of separation. Old Drunkard activated all his skills and suddenly waved the dark green sword, slashing at Ji Tianqing fiercely. Suddenly, a huge sword light that was thousands of feet long tore the vast night sky apart. With the power to destroy heaven and earth, it arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. Wherever the sword light passed, the night sky was torn into 2 halves. It was as if it was separated into 2 spaces. Good sword technique. It's really something. Ji Tianxing could not help but praise when he saw the mystery of this sword technique. Of course, while praising, he also waved the sword of burial of heaven with a serious face and used a unique sword technique. Swing the sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and swung it out. A crescent-shaped sword light that was thousands of feet long was slashed towards Old Drunkard. The two sword lights, one green and one white, were almost the same size and power. Chapter 1331. Kaboom! When the two huge sword lights collided, a thunderous explosion resounded, shaking the heavens. Everything within 100 miles trembled violently, and a violent hurricane swept up the dust and smoke in the sky. The two sword lights collapsed at the same time, bursting into light fragments that illuminated half of the sky. However, this was not the final result. The two of them could not fight to a draw. After the crescent-shaped, blazing white sword light collapsed, countless lightning arcs surged out, enveloping the Old Drunkard like an inescapable net. The Old Drunkard was caught off guard and was instantly enveloped by the huge lightning net. Following a series of crackling sounds, the Old Drunkard's body convulsed and twisted like a sieve under the bombardment of lightning. Then his body was charred black and smoking as he fell straight down from the sky, crashing into the valley with a bang. Bang! Following a dull explosion, the Old Drunkard once again smashed a huge hole in the valley, splashing dust all over the sky. This gentlemanly duel came to an end. The loud explosion that reverberated between heaven and earth gradually dissipated, and the dust that covered the sky slowly settled down. The Old Drunkard's body was charred black and smoking as he lay in the deep hole, unable to move. From time to time, he would convulse and let out muffled groans. Ji Tianxing descended from the sky and came to the edge of the big hole, looking down at the Old Drunkard in the hole. After hesitating for a moment, he cupped his hands and said, "Senior, I'm sorry to offend you." Then he waved his hands and used a secret technique. Rays of golden light condensed into a mysterious seal. Seal! After the seal was formed, he shouted and pointed at the Old Drunkard with both hands. That mysterious seal immediately drilled into the Old Drunkard's body and enveloped him. The power of the seal erupted and immediately sealed the Old Drunkard's physical body, magic power, and soul power. The Old Drunkard was like a piece of charred wood, lying motionless at the bottom of the hole, unable to make any sound. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and lifted him out of the deep hole. Then he carried the Old Drunkard and flew back to Sunless Peak, quickly disappearing into the night. The commotion caused by the fight between the two of them was so great that it had alarmed the experts and experts of the Hidden God sect. When Ji Tianxing returned to the Hidden God sect, there were many deacons, elders, and disciples checking the situation. There were even a few experts flying towards the scene of the incident. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing's movements were concealed, so he was not discovered by anyone. He brought Old Drunkard back to the small courtyard where he lived and threw Old Drunkard onto the bed. Unable to struggle or resist, the Old Drunkard could only stare at him with his eyes wide open, revealing a look of intense anger and questioning. Ji Tianxing saw his pitiful appearance and couldn't help but comfort him. "Senior, I had no choice but to do this. I can only ask you to suffer for a while." With that, he cast a spell and burrowed into the ground, diving deep into the ground. Half an hour later, he once again dived 80 miles into the ground and approached the dark red barrier. This time, no one disturbed him, so he focused on studying the dark red light curtain. A quarter of an hour later, he figured out that this dark red light curtain was a huge defensive formation. Moreover, this was a primordial spirit realm sealing array that sealed an area of 1,000 miles. In other words, if he wanted to enter Sunless Peak and find the magma ocean deep in the Earth's core, he had to pass through this defensive array. It's almost impossible for me to break a primordial spirit realm sealing array with my attainments and strength. But there's a primordial spirit realm sealing array hidden under Sunless Peak. It's very likely to hide a huge secret. It must be related to the heavenly dipper godfire cauldron. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and pondered silently. He couldn't do anything about this ceiling formation, but his heart was itching. He really wanted to enter and search for sect master Shui's traces. After all, he had already dealt with old drunkard, so he couldn't give up halfway, right? Just as he was frowning and thinking, the voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind. It's just a low-grade primordial spirit realm sealing array. What's so difficult about it? Suddenly hearing the voice of the burial of heaven, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed and he asked, "Burial of heaven, can you break this array?" The burial of heaven was silent, as if it was secretly observing this array. After about 10 breaths, its voice sounded again. It's indeed a low-grade primordial spirit realm sealing array, and it's a beginner-level primordial spirit realm sealing array. It doesn't even use the primordial spirit realm sealing array. If I'm not wrong, this is just a beginner-level heavenly breeze flowing fire array. The person who set up this array has just reached the primordial spirit realm, and his foundation is still shallow. This array has a radius of 1,000 miles, and with the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the power of the earth's core, it can continue to operate for tens of thousands of years without drying up. Hearing the words of the burial of heaven, Ji Tianxing felt much more at ease. Since he knows so much about this array, I'm relieved. The burial of heaven said indifferently, "I can't break the array with my divine soul avatar, but I'll pass on the method to break the array to you and help you at the critical moment. I guarantee that you'll be able to break it." "Good." Ji Tianxing nodded excitedly and quickly replied, "I'm ready. Let's start now." Then listen carefully. The burial of heaven said in a low and solemn voice, "The heavenly breeze flowing fire array is only a beginner-level primordial spirit realm sealing array. It only uses 12 methods of setting up the array, which are the burial of heaven told Ji Tianxing the method of setting up the heavenly breeze flowing fire array, its structure and principles, and taught him the method to break it. After 15 minutes, when the burial of heaven finished, Ji Tianxing memorized the method to break the array and seriously studied it for a long time. After an hour, after he had completely understood, he waved his palms and used his mana to break the array. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Streaks of dark golden light streaked across the night sky like water pillars and landed on the dark red light barrier. The light barrier suddenly trembled slightly, and endless dark red flames splashed out and spread in all directions. Ji Tianxing was in the sea of fire and was surrounded by rolling flames, but he did not feel any pain. He continued to focus on breaking the array. He did his best to break the array and forgot about the passage of time. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. The method to break the array was about to be completed, and a crack could already be clearly seen on the dark red light barrier. Finally, at the critical moment, the burial of heaven's sword flew over without hesitation, releasing a powerful and mysterious black light, and stabbed into the crack. An invisible and majestic power immediately poured into the dark red light barrier and spread along the lines of the array. Crack! With a crisp sound, a wash-basin-sized gap appeared on the dark red light barrier. A stream of crimson fire, as thick as a bucket, suddenly gushed out like a fountain. Chapter 1332. Even though the core fire was very powerful, Ji Tianxing was not afraid at all. He immediately held the sword of burial of heaven and flew toward the gap. Swoosh! He turned into a streak of golden light, passed through the gushing dark red flames, and entered the gap. In the next moment, he entered the heavenly wind flowing fire array. As far as the eye could see, there was a dark red color everywhere. Around him was the dark night sky, with red flames floating in spirals, surging like waves. 10 miles below him was a crimson sea filled with dark red magma. The endless magma flowed slowly, emitting red flames that soared into the sky, turning the surroundings into a sea of fire. Ji Tianxing was in the rolling sea of fire, enduring the terrifying heat at all times. But his body had been refined to the extreme, and his defense was extremely strong. He was not afraid of the core fire at all. He looked around and quickly saw that this magma sea was very wide, as if it had no end. Above him was the rock layer, below him was the magma sea, and there was a 10-mile space in between. Such a strange terrain was very rare in the depths of the earth. He was sure that this magma sea had always existed since ancient times. Moreover, Sect Master Shui and the heavenly dipper Godfire cauldron he was looking for were in this magma sea. But this magma sea was too vast, and it was too difficult to find a person in a divine cauldron. Ji Tianxing had no other choice. He could only release his soul power into the magma sea and search from the south to the north. He flew above the magma sea, and wherever he passed, his soul power would scan the surrounding 30 miles, carefully searching. This vast sea of lava was not simple. It contained an invisible and mysterious power that suppressed the power of his soul. In the outside world, his soul power could search a radius of 100 miles. But in this magma sea, he could only search a radius of 30 miles. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. Ji Tianxing carefully searched the magma sea within a radius of 200 miles. Unfortunately, he did not find any clues, and there was no trace of Sect Master Shui or the heavenly dipper Godfire cauldron. He could only expand the search area and search patiently. Time passed quietly, and soon, 10 hours had passed. Ji Tianxing searched a radius of 2,000 miles and searched the entire sea of lava, but he still couldn't find Patriarch Shui and the heavenly dipper Godfire cauldron. But in the process, he encountered several powerful demonic beasts that lived in the magma ocean. There was a lava giant that was hundreds of meters tall. Its entire body was condensed from lava, and it possessed extremely terrifying power. There were also some fire spirits that were more than 10 meters tall and had a variety of forms. They usually looked like dark red fireballs, sleeping quietly in the sea of lava. Once an enemy approached, those fire spirits would be awakened and transform into various forms, nimbly and swiftly launching attacks. Other than that, there were also 2 dark golden fire pythons entrenched in the sea of lava. These demonic beasts were all rare species. In the sea of magma, they had unique cultivation conditions, and their strength grew very quickly. These demonic beasts were all at the 2nd and 3rd level of the soul refining realm. When they discovered Ji Tianxing, they were intimidated by his powerful aura and retreated far away. Only those few fire spirits tried to attack a few times. However, Ji Tianxing easily repelled them, scaring them into hurriedly fleeing, not daring to harass him again. I've already searched for 10 hours and searched the entire sea of lava, but I still can't find Patriarch Shui and the heavenly dipper Godfire cauldron. The seal I placed on the old drunkard only lasts for 12 hours. The time is almost up. If I still can't find Patriarch Shui after the old drunkard seal is removed, this matter will be exposed. At that time, I'm afraid there will be some twists and turns, and there will be some unnecessary misunderstandings and conflicts. Ji Tianxing pondered silently, then furrowed his brows anxiously. He couldn't understand. He had clearly searched the entire sea of lava, but why couldn't he find Patriarch Shui and the heavenly dipper Godfire cauldron? Could it be that Patriarch Shui and the cauldron weren't in the sea of lava, and his deduction was wrong? After pondering hard for a long time, Ji Tianxing suddenly had a flash of inspiration as he thought of a certain possibility. If they're not in the sea of lava, could they be even deeper down? Thinking of this, he hurriedly drilled into the sea of lava and flew even deeper underground. The temperature of the lava was terrifyingly hot, enough to melt ordinary soul-level magic treasures. Ji Tianxing's body was wrapped in a layer of golden light, protecting himself. He could freely travel through the sea of lava, and he wouldn't be harmed. Soon, he passed through the sea of lava more than 20 miles deep and drilled into the underground rock layer. He released his spiritual power and spread it out in all directions, carefully searching underground. About 2 hours later, he came to the center of the sea of lava, and it was located in the rock layer 120 miles underground. Suddenly, his spiritual power detected a majestic spiritual power fluctuation in the rock layer not far in front of him. There was also a dark red, flowing fire that enveloped the rock layer in a radius of 10 miles, like a huge ball of light. Finally found it. It must be here. Ji Tianxing's spirit was immediately shaken, and he hurriedly drilled forward. In the blink of an eye, he came close to the flowing fireball. After careful observation with his spiritual power, he found that there was a huge cave hidden in the rock layer wrapped in the ball of light. That cave was at least 1,000 feet wide. The vast and mighty divine soul power and the violent and powerful flame aura were coming from that cave. However, the cave was protected by the flowing fireball. If he wanted to enter and check the situation in the cave, he had to break the huge light shield of the fireball. He carefully observed for a long time and found that this huge flowing fireball was also a light shield formed by a defensive formation. This formation was the heavenly wind flowing fire formation that he had broken before, but it was a smaller version of the formation, and its power was more condensed, and its defense was stronger. But this was not a problem for him. He repeated the same trick and used all his strength to break the formation. After 2 hours, he broke a hole in the light shield formed by the dark red flowing fire. Swoosh! He turned into a golden flowing light, passed through the hole, and entered the formation. He walked along the thick rock layer for about 10,000 feet and then entered an empty cave. Only now did he see the situation in the cave. The cave was oval in shape like an egg, and the surrounding rock walls were rough and uneven. It was obvious that it was naturally formed. The originally dark rock walls were burned red by the geocentric fire. The entire cave was filled with flowing fire. It was vast and mighty like a flood. In the middle of the cave, there was a golden altar that was 300 feet wide and 10 feet tall. At the top of the ancient and mysterious altar, there was an ancient bronze cauldron as large as a house. Chapter 1333. Ji Tianxing's eyes were glued to the bronze dragon tripod. He could not take his eyes off of it. The style of the bronze tripod was ancient and simple. There were no complicated patterns or patterns. It was simple but majestic. Other than the 6 ears and 9 dragons as decorations, there were 4 lines of ancient words engraved on the tripod. Even with his knowledge and experience, he could not identify what those words were. He only knew that this ancient, mysterious, and majestic bronze tripod must be the Big Dipper Godfire tripod that he was about to get. The divine tripod stood motionless at the top of the altar. There was a hint of dark red on the tripod, and it emitted a terrifying heat. Inside the bronze tripod, there was an endless amount of heavenly wind and flowing fire. It was spewed out from the mouths of the 9 dragons, forming 9 dragon-shaped fire pillars that did not dissipate for a long time. Ji Tianxing stared at the divine tripod with bright eyes. He was in awe and his heart was moved. But at this moment, a cold and dignified female voice suddenly sounded in the cave. "Who are you?" Ji Tianxing was suddenly awakened. He immediately turned his head and looked to the north of the cave. He saw that at the northern edge of the cave, there was a 10-foot-high platform. There was a wide throne on it. The throne was very exquisite and beautiful. It was inlaid with all kinds of dark red, dark gold, and dazzling purple gems. It exuded a sacred and luxurious aura. Most importantly, this throne was extremely beneficial to one's cultivation. On the luxurious throne sat an old woman in a luxurious green robe. The old woman looked like she was in her 70s or 80s. Her waist-long hair had turned silver and was tied up in a dignified and elegant bun with a jade hairpin. But the old woman's face did not look old. Her skin was still white and soft. She was no different from a woman in her 30s. Her face could not be called beautiful, but she had a dignified and elegant temperament. She looked extremely noble. Her eyes were bright and deep. They contained the light of wisdom, but they were not aggressive. Even though she was glaring at Ji Tianxing, the uninvited guest, with hostility emanating from her body, her gaze was not fierce. Ji Tianxing believed that one's face was a reflection of one's heart. Looking at this silver-haired old woman's face and eyes, he could guess that she must be a kind and benevolent old woman. However, even though the silver-haired old woman's aura was gentle, her body contained enough power to shake the heavens and earth. Her aura was incomparably powerful, as vigorous as a mountain, causing Ji Tianxing to feel reverence in his heart. He could almost immediately determine that the strength of the silver-haired old woman had long surpassed the spirit refinement realm and reached the essence spirit realm. After a moment of silence, he walked to the center of the cave and bowed to the silver-haired old woman from afar. However, before he could say his name, the silver-haired old woman's expression changed drastically when she saw his face. She had been sitting on the throne, meditating and cultivating the whole time. At this moment, she widened her eyes in shock and stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. She actually sat up with a swoosh. "You? Mas? Master?" The silver-haired old woman's expression was very complicated. Her eyes flickered, and the rim of her eyes was a little wet. She held the throne with one hand and stood up with a trembling body. She quickly walked toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing immediately swallowed the words he was about to say and looked at the silver-haired old woman with confusion. "Strange, I haven't said my name and identity. Why is she so emotional? No, she doesn't even know me. Even if she saw me, she wouldn't be so emotional. She must have mistaken me for someone else." Thinking of this, he quickly said to the silver-haired old woman, "Senior, if I'm not wrong, you are Master Shui of the Hidden God sect, right? I am Ji Tianxing, the domain lord of the Tianxin domain. I have come to the Hidden God sect to visit Master Shui under the orders of the Emperor." After saying this, he took out the seal of mountains and rivers and presented it to the silver-haired old woman. The silver-haired old woman's body stiffened, and she was stunned on the spot. She frowned and stared at Ji Tianxing for a long time. Then she muttered in a low voice, "Impossible. How can there be such a similar person in this world?" After a while, she suppressed the shock and excitement in her heart and calmed down. She stared at the seal of mountains and rivers and observed it carefully for a moment. Then she sized up Ji Tianxing a few times before speaking in a calm tone. "I am the sect master of the Hidden God sect, Shui Ruyu." "Young man, did you just say that you are the domain lord of the Tianxin domain, Ji Tianxing?" "That's right, it's me." Ji Tianxing suppressed the doubts in his heart and nodded calmly. Shui Ryu continued to stare at him and asked, "You have come to our sect to look for me under the orders of the Emperor of the human race?" "Yes." Ji Tianxing nodded again. He didn't show it on his face, but he was muttering in his heart, "So the master of the Hidden God sect is called Shui Ryu. Such an elegant name. She must have been a beauty when she was young. However, she is the master of a sect, a primordial spirit realm expert. Who did she think I was just now? How could she lose her composure and be so emotional?" At this time, Shui Ryu turned and walked back to the throne and sat down gracefully. She looked down at Ji Tianxing with deep eyes and said in a dignified tone, "Since you claim to be under the orders of the Emperor, do you have the Emperor's decree? If you don't have the Emperor's personal decree, no matter what you say, I will not forgive you for trespassing on the forbidden grounds." Ji Tianxing was already prepared. He quickly took out the Emperor's personal decree from his spatial ring. "Master Shui, I had no choice but to trespass on the forbidden grounds. Your sect has hidden the matters regarding the Divine Cauldron and the Imperial Court too deeply. Even the elders in the sect don't know about it. I couldn't see you, so I decided to trespass on my own." He gave a simple explanation. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and shot out a golden light. It wrapped around the Emperor's decree and flew to Shui Ryu. Shui Ryu stretched out her hand to receive the decree. She waved her hand and shot out rays of golden light. She executed a secret technique to undo the seal on the scroll. After a moment, the scroll slowly unfolded and floated in front of her. It lit up with a dazzling golden light. Ji Tianxing didn't know what was written in the Emperor's decree. He only saw that when Shui Ryu saw the contents of the decree, her expression changed slightly. Her eyes even flashed with shock and disbelief. In fact, Shui Ryu couldn't help but take a few more glances at him before she finished reading the decree. This made him even more puzzled. He secretly guessed. What did the emperor say in the decree? Isn't it to take away the divine cauldron? After a long while, Shui Ryu finished reading the decree. She then kept the scroll and solemnly kept it in her spatial ring. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze. Her gaze was complicated. She seemed to be excited, and her heart was filled with emotions. After a moment of silence, she then asked, Ji Tianxing, are you really the successor of the Kenshin? Chapter 1334. Could it be that the monarch had pointed out my identity in the edict and said that I am the successor of the Kenshin? This was the first thought that appeared in Ji Tianxing's mind. He nodded at Shui Ryu and answered truthfully, that's right. Shui Ryu's pupils contracted as her emotions became even more complicated. She actually sighed. She lowered her head slightly as a trace of sadness appeared in her eyes, as if she was recalling something from the past. A moment later, she continued to ask, Tianxing, can you tell this old one how you obtained the Kenshin inheritance? This. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and hesitated to answer. He could naturally see that Shui Ryu's impression and attitude towards him had become much closer after learning that he was the successor of the Kenshin. He could no longer suppress the doubts in his heart as he asked Shui Ryu, Sect Master Shui, this junior doesn't quite understand. Why are you asking about the Kenshin? This junior has come to the Hidden God sect under the monarch's orders to take away the heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron. What does this have to do with the Kenshin? Shui Ryu was startled for a moment before she laughed involuntarily. Her laughter actually contained some bitterness and self-mockery. Tianxing, don't be anxious about the heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron. We can talk about it later. This old one only respects and admires the Kenshin. After learning that you are the successor of the Kenshin, I want to know more about you. You should be able to understand this old one's feelings, right? Ji Tianxing shook his head as he said in a low voice, Sect Master Shui, this junior may be young, but I am not someone who is ignorant of worldly affairs. When this junior barged into the cave just now, your mind was already in chaos the moment you saw this junior. You lost your composure and even mistook this junior for someone else. This junior is certain that you do not simply respect and admire the Kenshin. It is very likely that you are related to the Kenshin in some way. As he spoke, he stared intently at Shui Ryu, observing the changes in her expression. As expected, Shui Ryu's complexion changed slightly. Her gaze was somewhat evasive. She didn't dare to look directly into his eyes. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianxing was even more certain. He continued, a long time ago, a peerless master once told me that Kenshin had never taken in any disciples when he was alive, but he had 4 followers who could be considered his in-name disciples. The surnames of these 4 in-name disciples were Gu, Yi, Xiao, and Shui. As the descendant of the sword god, I have a mission, and that is to find these 4 seniors. Before this, I had already found Yi Hengchuan and Xiao Wentian. Run Wang Yi lived in seclusion in the boundless realm of the Manga Mountain Range. He guarded the city alone and waited bitterly for one person. On the other hand, Xiao Wentian lived in seclusion in the great swamp of the southern wasteland and established the Xiao clan, an ancient family. He had long since flourished and had many children and grandchildren, enjoying the rest of his life. Of the 4 seniors, only Gu and Shui have not been found, and there have been no clues. Ji Tianxing spoke frankly with assurance. When Shui Ryu heard these words, she tilted her head slightly. Her expression was very complicated as she remained silent. Ji Tianxing revealed a slight smile and said calmly, when I came to the Hidden God sect previously, I only wanted to follow orders to retrieve the divine cauldron. I never thought about this matter. Even when I knew that the surname of the sect master of the Hidden God sect was Shui, I never thought about this. It was only now that I finally understand why you were so agitated. Even as an immortal soul stage master, you actually lost your composure. Sect Master Shui, if I'm not wrong, you're one of the 4 in-name disciples of Kenshin, Guyi Xiao, Shui and Shui, right? After he finished speaking, he looked at Shui Ryu with a look of intense anticipation. Shui Ryu was silent for a long time before she slowly turned her head to look at him. At this moment, not only did she look a little sad, but her eyes were also covered with a thin layer of mist. As an immortal soul stage master and a sect master, her heart was as still as water. She was an expert with a strong will and wouldn't lose her composure easily. If her will wasn't strong enough, how could she have guarded the hidden god sect and protected the divine cauldron for hundreds of years? But now that she saw Ji Tianxing and heard Ji Tianxing talk about the past, she couldn't help but cry. This was because Ji Tianxing's guess was right. She was indeed the fourth disciple of Kenshin, Shui Ruoyu. Furthermore, she had many stories, and her heart was filled with too much pain. Kenshin, you are indeed Master's successor. Master's legacy will definitely be brought to greater heights in your hands. When you speak with fervor and assurance, your confident appearance and high spirits are so similar to Master back then. Shui Ruoyu looked at Ji Tianxing and squeezed out a smile. Her tone was filled with emotion and reminiscence. When Ji Tianxing saw her expression and eyes, he suddenly felt a sense of déjà vu, and his heart was touched. I seem to have seen Sect Master Shui's expression and eyes on Xiaoling before. That's a kind of regret of not being able to love someone deeply. But compared to Xiaoling, there's more despair and reminiscence in her eyes. After all, Kenshin is already dead. Sect Master Shui will never be able to see him again. Could it be that Sect Master Shui, as an in-name disciple of Kenshin, has fallen in love with Kenshin for her entire life? This thought suddenly flashed across Ji Tianxing's mind, and he was stunned. At the same time, Burial of Heaven's deep and aged voice sounded in his mind. You brat, you've finally understood. Ji Tianxing understood what it meant and felt that it was unbelievable. Burial of Heaven, did I guess correctly? Burial of Heaven didn't reply to him. It said to Shui Ruoyu in a deep and solemn tone. Shui, thousands of years have passed. You've also gone from a budding age to a white-haired person today. Why can't you resolve the knot in your heart and let him go? Shui Ruoyu was secretly upset. Suddenly hearing Burial of Heaven's voice, her body shook. She raised her sleeve to wipe away the tears in her eyes. She immediately turned her head and looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze. She asked in disbelief, Burial of Heaven? Is that its voice? Ji Tianxing didn't say anything. He only nodded calmly. Burial of Heaven's voice sounded again. Its tone was filled with vicissitudes and emotions. Kenshin was obsessed with the way of the sword his entire life. He was born for the way of the martial way and died for the way of the divine way. There are many women like you who are infatuated with him without regret, but who can get his attention and love. Back then when Kenshin left, I reminded you not to be too emotional. In the end, the one who will be hurt will only be yourself. I didn't expect that after thousands of years, you would still be infatuated with him without regret. It's a pity that Kenshin won't be able to see it. This time, Shui Ruoyu heard it clearly. She was immediately sure that this was indeed Burial of Heaven's voice. She stared at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and said in a complicated tone, Tianxing, you actually obtained the Burial of Heaven's sword? What is its current situation? Ji Tianxing didn't say anything. He directly took out the broken Burial of Heaven and presented it in front of Shui Ruoyu. Shui Ruoyu's expression changed. Her figure flashed and flew over, landing beside Ji Tianxing. She stared at the Burial of Heaven's sword and asked anxiously, Burial of Heaven, it really is you. Back then when you left with Master, where did you go? Chapter 1335. Shui Ryu could not believe her eyes. She could not believe that after 1,000 years, she would be able to see the sword of Burial of Heaven again. She was very emotional. After seeing the Burial of Heaven, she could no longer hold back her anxiety and doubts. She could not wait to ask the Burial of Heaven what had happened back then. This question had been hidden in her heart for 1,000 years. It had always been an unsolved mystery. Now, she could finally ask the Burial of Heaven personally. She would soon know the answer. She could not help but stretch out her hands and hold the sword of Burial of Heaven. She looked at it expectantly, waiting for its answer. The burial of heaven was silent for a while before it said in a low voice, Shui, when Kenshin fell, I was also heavily injured and was almost completely destroyed. Even though I've awakened now, my memories are fragmented and incomplete. I can't remember clearly what happened in the past. Shui Ruiyu's body suddenly stiffened. The anticipation and anxiety in her heart gradually dissipated. No, how could this be? Burial of heaven, you must know. You must know what happened. Think about it carefully. You will definitely remember. What happened to Master? The burial of heaven saw that she was getting more and more emotional. It comforted her. I know that you have been worried for 1,000 years. This question has also troubled you for 1,000 years. But I really can't remember clearly. I can only wait until I recover my vitality and gradually recover my memories. Only then will I know what happened. Ji Tianxing stood silently at the side, listening to the burial of heaven, comforting Shui Ruiyu. He did not open his mouth to interrupt. After a long time, Shui Ruiyu's emotions gradually calmed down. She endured the sadness and sorrow in her heart and temporarily put this matter aside. She sat back on the throne. After a while, she returned to her usual appearance. She was still as calm and serene as before. Ji Tianxing looked at her silently. Seeing her joy and sorrow, he gradually understood her feelings. It seems that Sect Master Shui is also a person with a lot of stories. She was infatuated with Kenshin. Even if 1,000 years had passed, she would never regret it. The left protector was infatuated with her and even confessed his feelings to her in public, but she heartlessly rejected him. In the end, he became an old drunkard who drank to drown his sorrows. Sigh. The word love is hard to describe in a few words. The bitterness in Sect Master Shui's heart has been buried deep for 1,000 years. Today, after seeing me in the burial of heaven, it is normal for her to lose her composure. These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind, and he couldn't help but murmur in a low voice. Once I see Kenshin, I'll make a mistake for life. If I don't see Kenshin, I'll make a mistake for life. At this time, Shui Ryu looked at Ji Tianxing with clear eyes and said calmly, Tianxing, I lost my composure just now and let you see a joke. However, we're talking about private matters just now. Now, this old woman will talk business with you. Ji Tianxing nodded and bowed slightly. Please speak, Sect Master Shui. Shui Ryu's expression was solemn, and she said solemnly, Since you are here on the orders of the Emperor, you must already know the origin of the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron and the origin of the Hidden God Sect. However, the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron is one of the clan protection divine artifacts of the Imperial Court, and it has a very strong restraining power against the devil race. However, this item is a divine artifact and not easy to control. Therefore, the Imperial Court will not use it unless it is absolutely necessary. Our sect was born to protect the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron, and it is very likely that we will die for it in the future. Hearing this, Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a smile, Sect Master Shui, there is no need to worry. I am here to discuss this matter with you in order to take away the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron. The Emperor has already given the order to give this cauldron to me. If I take it away, the Hidden God Sect will no longer need to protect it. Shui Ryu revealed a meaningful smile and shook her head lightly. No, Tianxing, you are wrong. The Hidden God Sect was born to protect the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron, so it is natural that we will stay with it. Later, this old woman will help you refine the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron and obtain its approval. However, after you obtain the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron, this old woman will give you a big gift. What gift? Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion and asked subconsciously. The Hidden God Sect. Shui Yu pointed above her head and said in a solemn tone, This old woman will give the entire Hidden God Sect to you. I can't accept this. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment and quickly waved his hand to refuse. Sect Master Shui. The Hidden God Sect is the blood, sweat, and tears of several generations of your sect. I can't accept your gift. Shui Ryu looked at him with a firm gaze and said with an unquestionable tone, This matter is not something that you and I can decide. This is the Emperor's decision, and he has already stated it clearly in the order. This, Ji Tianxing was speechless. After all, it was the Emperor's order, and he couldn't refute it. After a moment of silence, he asked, "May I ask Sect Master Shui, what kind of gift are you talking about?" Shui Ryu revealed a kind smile and explained, "As long as you can obtain the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron's approval, the Hidden God Sect will be under your command and listen to your orders. In the future, when you go to the battlefield to resist the Devil Race's army, the Hidden God Sect will follow you to the battlefield and kill your enemies. Of course, you don't have to worry about the affairs of the Hidden God Sect. Normally, this old woman and the elders of the sect will take care of it, so you won't be distracted." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and felt that this was a good idea, so he nodded in agreement. "Many thanks for Sect Master Shui's help. Since this is the Emperor's order, I will follow it. Sect Master Shui, please tell the elders and disciples of your sect that I don't have the time to care about the Hidden God Sect, and I won't interfere in the sect's affairs. Only when the Imperial Court needs us to stand up and fight against the Devil Race and protect the people of the human race will I command the entire Hidden God Sect." That's good." Shui Ryu saw that he finally agreed and nodded in satisfaction. Ji Tianxing hesitated for a moment and continued, "Sect Master Shui, now that the Devil Emperor has returned to the Northern Desert, the Devil Race is rising and their forces are growing rapidly. Now, the Devil Race's army is attacking the territories of the three races in a frenzy, trying to sweep across the profound sky continent, kill all living beings of the various races, and unify the world. Chaos has come, and as the domain lord under the Imperial Court, I naturally have to protect the peace of the region and fight against the Devil Race's army. In the past year, I have found Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian and asked them to come out and help me fight against the Devil Emperor. Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian have both agreed to this matter, and when I go to the Northern Desert, they will come out and help me. Today, I sincerely hope that Sect Master Shui can come out of seclusion and join us in resisting and dissolving the Demon Emperor's conspiracy." After he finished speaking, he looked at Shui Ryu with sincerity and bowed deeply. Shui Ryu didn't hesitate at all and nodded with a smile. "Tianxing, in fact, you don't need to ask this old woman. This old woman will do her best to help you. After all, this is the Emperor's order." Chapter 1336. Seeing Shui Ryu agree decisively, Ji Tianxing let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly bowed to express his thanks. "Many thanks for Sect Master Shui's help. Sect Master Shui is deeply righteous. This junior can't thank you enough." Shui Ryu waved her hand, indicating that he didn't need to be so courteous. She smiled amiably and said, "In public, this old one is a trusted subordinate of the monarch. Naturally, I will obey the monarch's orders and help you with all my strength. In private, this old one is Master's fourth disciple, and you are the successor of Master's legacy. You are equivalent to this old one's junior brother. How can this old one not help you? Moreover, this old one also hates the Devil Race to the bone. I wish that I could be like Master, holding a 3-foot-long divine sword and slaughtering all the devils in the world." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, "Oh, Sect Master Shui also has a blood feud with the Devil Race?" "That's right." Shui Ryu nodded and explained in a low voice, "This old one was born in a family of generals since young. 3 generations of my ancestors were all valiant generals of the Imperial Court and had outstanding military achievements. When this old one was young, the Devil Race wreaked havoc in the world. The Devil Emperor invaded the central state and wantonly massacred the common people. This old one's grandfather, father, and uncles all died on the battlefield under the blades of the Devil Race experts. Later on, this old one's entire family was besieged by the Devil Race experts. More than 300 people in the family were killed. It was the monarch who saved this old one, allowing this old one to survive. Later on, this old one met Master. It was Master's guidance and teaching that allowed this old one to become a martial expert and have today's achievements. Speaking up to here, Shui Ryu paused for a moment. Recalling those tragic past events, even after 1,000 years, she was still filled with grief and indignation. Her words were filled with monstrous hatred towards the devil race. After Master left the profound sky continent, this old one inherited my father's legacy and continued to serve the imperial court loyally. The monarch saw that this old one was talented and intelligent and was not suitable to lead an army in battle. Thus, he gave this old one a top-secret mission. Thus, this old one joined the divine hidden sect and started as an intersect elder. 300 years ago, I was promoted to sect master and personally guarded the divine cauldron. After listening to Shui Yu's narration of the past, Ji Tianxing finally understood the whole story. No wonder the Water Patriarch listened to the imperial court and guarded the cauldron for the imperial court. He hid his identity here for hundreds of years and was still loyal. I really didn't expect that sect master Shui, Qin Xin, and the monarch had such a relationship. If that's the case, the Celestial Emperor must have thought long and hard before sending me to the hidden god sect to look for sect master Shui and obtain the heavenly dipper godfire cauldron. Sex. That's why she's Willing's cauldron of stuffs. Sect masters. After that, the sex understood the sex well, to understand, as the master, s2s. The sex, s nos. Ji Tianxing listened patiently. He had a deeper understanding of Shui Ryu's past. Just as the old and the young were chatting happily, a stream of light suddenly flew over from the top of the cave and landed in front of Shui Ryu. Shui Ryu stretched out her hand and caught the stream of light in her palm. She opened her palm and saw that it was a communication jade slip with a seal on it. This was a secret jade slip that the first elder and second elder used only in emergencies. She raised her eyebrows and released a strand of consciousness from her primordial spirit. She entered the jade slip and checked the information inside. After a while, she put away the communication jade slip and glanced at Ji Tianxing with a strange expression. Ji Tianxing saw the change in her expression and guessed that it was probably a jade slip sent by the sect elder of the hidden god sect. The fact that he had injured the old drunkard and trespassed into the forbidden grounds must have been exposed. As expected, Shui Ryu looked at him with a playful expression and asked, Tianxing, before you trespassed into the forbidden grounds, did you beat up the left protector? Cough. Ji Tianxing was a little embarrassed. He explained with a smile, Sect Master Shui, I had no choice. Please forgive me. The left protector was guarding the mountain gate. He didn't know the relationship between the hidden god sect and the imperial court, so he stopped me from entering. Fortunately, I knew Shi Zhongjian and was able to enter the sect. But when I went to talk to the second elder about this, the second elder didn't know. I didn't know when the second elder would report this to you, so I had no choice but to trespass into the forbidden grounds. But I didn't expect that the left protector had his eyes on me. When I was breaking the formation, he suddenly appeared and wanted to catch me and punish me. I had no choice but to agree to leave Sunless Peak with him and fight outside. But don't worry, the left protector and I were fighting like gentlemen. We only exchanged 2 or 3 moves. Shui Ryu watched him explain the matter without stopping, and she was actually watching with great interest. There was a gentle smile on the corner of her mouth. After he finished speaking, Shui Ryu chuckled and asked in return, A battle between gentlemen? You've only exchanged 2 or 3 moves, and you've already beaten him black and blue, leaving him covered in wounds and charred like charcoal? The great elder sent a message saying that the left protector's injuries were quite serious. He would need at least 3 to 5 years to recover. Ji Tianxing rubbed the tip of his nose and smiled awkwardly. About this, I wasn't too sure about the left protector's strength. I didn't hold back at that time and used 60% of my strength. If I knew he was so weak, I would have only used 40% of my strength. Shui Ryu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She shook her head and said, Sai, your little junior brother is really too monstrous. You are so young, but you have the strength of a half-step primordial spirit realm. You are twice as strong as the left protector. This is really shocking and rare. Now that I think about it, when Master was your age, his strength was far inferior to yours. Ji Tianqing just smiled and didn't say anything. The Burial of Heaven had also said something similar. Even when Kenshin was his age, he wasn't as monstrous as him. His strength and talent had already surpassed Kenshin's. After a moment of silence, Shui Liu said in a gentle tone, Tianqing, even if the left protector was injured by you, you don't have to blame yourself. I won't blame you either. Who asked him to be unrestrained and drown his sorrows with alcohol all day long? He even ended up in such a sorry state. I look down on this kind of man the most. He gave up on himself after suffering a setback and thought that he could soften my heart. Only someone like Master who would rather break than submit and press forward courageously is a true hero, a peerless swordsman. With a 3-foot Qing Feng sword in hand, he dares to call the sun and moon to change the sky. Seeing Shui Ryu's disdain for the old drunkard, Ji Tianqing felt sympathy for the poor old drunkard. Sect Master Shui. Actually, the left protector is also a sentimental person. He is too emotional, which is why he was hurt so badly. He suffered a setback and was ridiculed by others. He would rather resign from the position of protector, but still stay at the mountain gate of the Hidden God sect. He can't let go of you and wants to protect you for the rest of his life. Shui Rui frowned and said with anger, Tianqing, actually know about this? It must be that talkative brat, Shi Zhongjian. Chapter 1337. When Ji Tianqing saw that Shui Ryu was angry, he immediately comforted her and pleaded for leniency for Shi Zhongjian. After all, as a disciple of the sect, Shi Zhongjian actually dared to talk about the relationship between the sect master and left protector in private. This was a crime of offending one superior. If it was dealt with according to the sect rules, Shi Zhongjian would have to be confined for 3 to 5 years or be severely beaten up. Luckily, Shui Ryu loved and valued this junior brother, Ji Tianqing, very much. After hearing his words of persuasion, Shui Ryu's anger dissipated. She inputted a command into the communication jade slip and sent it out. After sending the communication jade letter, she then said to Ji Tianqing, all right, I've already given the order, they will naturally know how to deal with it. Tianqing, if you have anything to prepare, prepare it now. I will help you refine the divine cauldron later. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded his head. I don't have anything to prepare. Let us begin now. Shui Ryu nodded her head and flew to the center of the cave, landing on the wide sacrificial altar. Ji Tianqing also followed closely behind and landed beside her. The two of them stood on the sacrificial altar and were in the midst of the turbulent flowing fire as they looked at the heavenly dipper godfire cauldron that was 10 steps away. Shui Ryu pointed at the divine cauldron and explained to Ji Tianqing, Tianqing, the divine cauldron has been stored here for many years and has been absorbing the heavenly wind and flowing fire. Its power has already reached its peak. The divine cauldron doesn't look big, but it has a different world and profound principles. The heavenly wind and flowing fire stored in it is enough to turn 10,000 miles of land into a sea of magma. When you refine the divine cauldron, you must not be anxious. More haste, less speed. I will teach you the art of spring wind transforming rain. First, communicate with the heavenly wind and flowing fire in the divine cauldron. After you are compatible with it, you can begin to refine the divine cauldron. Shui Ryu was like a kind old granny and also like Ji Tianqing's elder. She patiently explained the key to refining the divine cauldron with a very kind attitude. Ji Tianqing also didn't understand why Shui Ryu was so kind to him. It was as though the two of them had known each other for many years and were deeply fated. But he didn't think too much about it. He suppressed these distracting thoughts at the bottom of his heart and listened intently. An hour later, Shui Ryu imparted the spring wind and rain secret technique to him. He sat on the altar and cultivated. It took him a full 4 hours to master the secret technique. Then he began to use the spring wind and rain secret technique, injecting his soul and mana into the divine cauldron to communicate with the heavenly wind and flowing fire in the divine cauldron. In the beginning, the divine cauldron rejected his magic power and divine soul and did not allow him to get close at all. Furthermore, The divine cauldron even released a powerful divine power that pushed him back 100 feet, almost causing him to fall off the altar. Although an ancient and powerful divine artifact, like the heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron, had yet to give birth to an artifact soul, it still possessed sufficient intelligence and intelligence. This was not an inanimate object, but a divine artifact with emotions. Refining it was definitely not an easy task. Later on, with Shui Yu's help, Ji Tianxing's mana and soul gradually came into contact with the divine cauldron. Only then did he truly feel how terrifying the power of the heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron was. Even the Sword of Burial of Heaven, which had now reached the level of a half-step divine artifact, could not be compared to the divine cauldron. The power of the divine cauldron was at least 5 times stronger than the Sword of Burial of Heaven. While Ji Tianxing was shocked, he also looked forward to refining the heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron as soon as possible. If he could control such a divine artifact, his combat power would increase by several times. At that time, he would be able to dominate the world and sweep everything before him. As time passed, 8 hours passed very quickly. Ji Tianxing used a full 8 hours before the divine cauldron accepted his mana and soul power. He also gradually understood the internal structure of the divine cauldron. He was extremely shocked by the precision and profoundness of the divine cauldron's array formation. Next, his soul and mana began to communicate with the heavenly wind and flowing fire in the divine cauldron. Inside the divine cauldron, there was a ball of silvery white light that wrapped around a ball of dark red liquid. That silvery white light was the heavenly wind, and the dark red liquid was the geocentric flowing fire. Although the two did not look big, in reality, they were condensed 10,000 times, and their power was condensed to the limit. Only a little heavenly wind, a drop of flowing fire, could destroy 100 miles of heaven and earth. Ji Tianxing carefully controlled his soul and mana, gradually coming into contact with the heavenly wind and flowing fire, repeatedly communicating and matching with it. Shui Ryu stood at the side, paying attention to his and the divine cauldron's movements, afraid that an accident would happen. The two of them were focused and forgot the passage of time. At the same time, on the peak of Sunless Peak, the sun was setting. More than 10 figures were gathered in the sect's conference hall at the peak of the mountain. There were men and women among these people, and most of them were middle-aged or elderly. They were all dressed luxuriously and had extraordinary auras. The main seat in the north was Sect Master Shui Ryu's throne. It had always been empty. The second elder and 2 white-haired elders stood on the left side of the hall. The right guardian and the 4 elders stood on the right side of the hall. There was also a young disciple in a white robe who was standing in the middle of the hall with a face full of guilt. He looked pitiful with his head lowered, as if admitting his fault. Without a doubt, this young disciple was Shi Zhongjian. Other than him, the most eye-catching person in the entire hall was the old drunkard who was dressed in rags and had a pitch-black face. The old drunkard sat in the clean and tidy hall, his back leaning against a red pillar with gold paint. He looked miserable and on the verge of death, which made people sympathize with him. The atmosphere in the hall was very oppressive and solemn, and all the elders had ugly expressions. The white-haired elder on the left glanced at the old drunkard, and his gaze landed on Shi Zhongjian. He reprimanded in a dignified voice, "Shi Zhongjian, look at what you have done. What kind of friend have you made? He's just a kid with an unknown background, and he's obviously up to no good. You actually brought him to our sect? Have you forgotten the sect rules? If you did not invite a wolf into the house, how would the left guardian be injured like this?" Another white-haired elder also reprimanded, "Shi Zhongjian, it's okay if you're muddle-headed, but you shouldn't be so muddle-headed. That kid is powerful and has evil intentions. Who knows what kind of trouble he will cause by barging into the forbidden area? If the sect leader blames you, you will be a sinner of our sect." Seeing the 2 elders' pained expressions, the second elder hurriedly stood up and consoled them. "Elders, calm down first. Don't be so nervous. I have seen Ji Tianxing before, and in my opinion, Ji Tianxing does not look like a sinister and despicable person. Perhaps he has other secrets? Moreover, Zhongjian is still young and seldom goes out to explore. His knowledge and experience are shallow, and his temperament is a little simple. Even if Ji Tianxing wants to harm our sect, Zhongjian was used by the villain. He did not do it on purpose. The two white-haired elders became even angrier when they heard her words. Second elder, other than this matter, you can't escape punishment either. You have seen that kid before, so why didn't you guard against him? Chapter 1338. The two white-haired old men were both furious, scolding Shi Zhongjian with harsh voices and faces. Even if the second elder tried to defend Shi Zhongjian, it would be useless. The other elders were also worried and couldn't help but reprimand Shi Zhongjian. Shi Zhongjian's situation became more and more awkward. He lowered his head even more and looked like he was going to admit his mistake and accept his punishment. Seeing this, the elders didn't say anything else. One of the white-haired elders stared at Shi Zhongjian with sharp eyes and said in a deep voice, Shi Zhongjian, the disaster has already happened. Do you admit your crime? Shi Zhongjian just lowered his head and didn't say anything. The white-haired elder frowned and said again, as a disciple of the sect, you have to admit your mistake. As long as you admit your mistake and reflect on it, the sect can give you a lighter punishment. The elders at the side all hurriedly signaled Shi Zhongjian with their eyes, indicating for him to quickly admit his guilt. Even Elder Lien Er sent a sound transmission to Shi Zhongjian. Zhongjian, since things have already come to this, you don't have to insist anymore. Hurry up and admit your mistake to the elders. Everyone is just going through the motions. Master will plead on your behalf, and you won't be severely punished. Hearing this, Shi Zhongjian finally raised his head. He looked at the second elder with firm eyes and said calmly in front of everyone, Elders, you are right. This disciple is still young and lacks experience. My temperament is also too simple. This disciple will work hard to improve in the future. However, this disciple will not admit his mistake. This disciple also doesn't believe that Big Brother Tianxing is that kind of person. He is the #1 prodigy of the continent. His status is noble and his talent is unparalleled. Why would he scheme against our hidden god sect? Why would he come all the way here to harm our sect? In short, this disciple will not believe it before the truth comes to light. Shi Zhongjian's eyes and tone were very firm. Even in the face of the elders reprimanding, he didn't back down. But before he could finish speaking, the expressions of all the elders changed, and they all revealed looks of disappointment. The two white-haired elders were so angry that their faces turned ashen. They looked like they were about to blow their beards and stare. Ridiculous. You traitorous disciple is so stubborn. It's hopeless. Second elder, look at the good disciple you've taught. He's already possessed to such an extent. Since Shi Zhongjian refuses to plead guilty, I ask the elders to sentence him according to the laws of our sect and let him reflect on his mistakes. Everyone looked pained and hateful, and they immediately wanted to convict Shi Zhongjian. The second elder was suddenly full of anxiety. She quickly stepped forward and stood in front of Shi Zhongjian. She said to the other elders, Elders, it's not that I'm partial to my disciple, but there are still some secrets in this matter. Please don't be impatient. The great elder had already sent a message to the sect leader to ask about the specific situation. After the great elder received the headmaster's reply, the truth of this matter would come to light. At that time, it wouldn't be too late to convict Shi Zhongjian. If Shi Zhongjian is really guilty, as his master, I can't absolve myself from the blame. When the time comes, I will also receive punishment. The second elder's tone was resolute and decisive. It was very firm and contained an unquestionable tone. When the elders saw her reaction, they couldn't continue to be overbearing. They could only cease their banners and cease their drums as they whispered softly. Indeed, she's worthy of being the most protective elder in our sect. AI. Second elder spared no effort to protect this kid. Shi Zhongjian, Shi Zhongjian. How can you be worthy of your master's nurturing and protection? All right, let's do as the second elder said. Everyone wait for a moment. Everyone was silent, and the main hall quickly quietened down. Not long after, a tall and sturdy white-haired old man stepped into the main hall with vigorous steps. His complexion was rosy and his eyes were bright. He was holding a jade slip in his hands, and his expression was filled with joy. When the people in the main hall saw that this person had arrived, they instantly revealed an expectant expression and hurriedly went up to welcome him. "Great Elder, you're finally back." "Great Elder," has the sect leader replied to the news. "What's the result? Has that kid been sentenced to death by the sect leader?" The elders turned their heads to look at the Great Elder, their eyes filled with anticipation. Shi Zhongjian also stared at the Great Elder. His fists were secretly clenched in his sleeves. He was obviously nervous and worried. The Great Elder walked to the middle of the main hall and stood still. He looked around and then raised his hand to signal for everyone to quiet down. "Everyone, please calm down. There's no need to be anxious or worried. I've just received the sect leader's personal order." As he spoke, he raised the jade slip in his hand. Everyone's mood became even more anxious. They looked at the jade slip expectantly and couldn't wait to know the answer. The Great Elder revealed a trace of a smile and continued, "We've all misunderstood that young Master Ji. Not only is he the continent's #1 prodigy, he also has no ill intentions towards our sect. Moreover, young Master Ji has a very deep relationship with our sect leader. He's our sect's distinguished guest. Young Master Ji has indeed come to our sect for a very important matter to discuss with our sect leader. The reason why he trespassed into the forbidden area was because he had no other choice. Everyone don't worry." Hearing the first elder's words, all the elders revealed looks of astonishment and began to whisper to each other. Shi Zhongjian also revealed a look of relief. His face was filled with a proud smile. His fists in his sleeves also slowly relaxed. "I knew it. Young Master Ji is definitely not that kind of person. He's a peerless prodigy and also my savior. I've never misjudged him," he muttered to himself. His tone was filled with excitement and pride. The second elder also clearly breathed a sigh of relief. His face revealed a trace of a smile. He nodded to Shi Zhongjian, indicating that everything was fine. The two white-haired elders who were angry before were now the most embarrassed. Their faces didn't look too good. The two of them didn't dare to look at Shi Zhongjian's expression. Their eyes were somewhat evasive. At this time, the Great Elder continued, "In addition, I have a piece of good news to announce. Because of young Master Ji's arrival, our sect leader has ended his seclusion and will come out soon. When the time comes, our sect leader will gather all the elders and deacons to publicly announce something. Although I don't know what it is for now, it's definitely related to our sect's 1,000 years of foundation." Hearing his words, even a fool would know that this matter was definitely related to Ji Tianxing. Moreover, the elusive sect leader Shui had actually appeared because of Ji Tianxing's arrival and wanted to announce something important. This was enough to show how revered Ji Tianxing's status was. How deep was his relationship with sect leader Shui? Everyone recalled the scene of them cursing Ji Tianxing and criticizing Shi Zhongjian a moment ago. They instantly felt incomparably ashamed. The elders in the hall all revealed looks of shame. They were so embarrassed that they wanted to find a hole to hide in. Chapter 1339. Soon, a day had passed. It was evening again, and the dark red setting sun shone on the hidden god sect. The elders and deacons had been waiting for an entire day, full of anticipation. Everyone gathered around the conference hall, ready to welcome the sect master out of seclusion. At the same time, everyone was discussing the important news that the sect master was about to announce. What was it? When the sun slowly set and disappeared at the end of the horizon, the world gradually became dim. At this moment, the peaceful, sunless peak suddenly trembled violently. The entire sunless peak was shaking, and there was a boom, boom, boom sound coming from underground, as if a great earthquake had occurred. The elders, deacons, and disciples on the peak were all shocked, and their expressions changed dramatically. Everyone scattered in all directions, shouting in fear, not knowing what had happened. The ground on the mountain peak kept bouncing up and down as cracks appeared one after another. The cliffs halfway up the mountain crumbled, and countless rocks fell down toward the foot of the mountain. The entire sunless peak immediately burst into an uproar. The entire sect was in chaos. Fortunately, the violent shaking and shaking only lasted for a few breaths of time before it disappeared. Sunless Peak was protected by a powerful array, so it did not suffer any substantial damage. Just as everyone was still in a state of shock, flames suddenly burst out from the ground and rushed into the sky from all directions, dyeing half the sky crimson. Countless fire pillars, each as thick as a water tank, burst out from the ground and valleys around Sunless Peak and reflected each other in the sky. For a time, the area within 1,000 miles was as red as fire, and heat waves were rolling. The elders and disciples of the Hidden God sect all looked up at the sky subconsciously, and they were a little dazed and stunned as they looked at the dazzling fire that filled the sky. Under everyone's amazed gaze, the scarlet fire that filled the sky quickly condensed into 9 huge scarlet dragons that were as large as mountains. Roar! 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 A few resounding dragon roars rang out as the 9 crimson fire dragons circled in the sky, then burrowed back into the ground. Swish, swish, swish. A moment later, the 9 scarlet fire dragons disappeared from the ground. The flames that filled the sky also dissipated, and the world returned to darkness. Between the mountains and rivers around Sunless Peak, the scorching heat and the overflowing magma actually dissipated at an extremely fast speed. The elders and disciples of the Hidden God sect could clearly feel that the flames and heat waves between heaven and earth had completely disappeared. The mountains, rivers, and earth within 1,000 miles of the area also gradually turned from a scorching hot state to a normal icy cold state. This kind of invisible change left everyone scratching their heads, and they began to discuss with doubts. What happened just now? Tens of thousands of fire pillars rushed into the sky and converged into 9 fire dragons, circling in the air. This is a phenomenon of heaven and earth. Understand, the sect master has come out of seclusion. That's why there's such a phenomenon. It must be because the sect master has reached the great accomplishment stage. Yes, it must be the Lord's sect master coming out of seclusion that caused this phenomenon. Someone guessed that the heaven and earth anomaly was related to sect master Shui and shouted excitedly. Therefore, countless disciples thought so and were full of hot blood as they cheered excitedly. The atmosphere of the entire Sunless Peak immediately changed from panic to wild joy. Everyone was in high spirits. The cheerful atmosphere lasted for about 15 minutes before the great elder announced in a dignified tone, "All disciples, immediately get into formation. All deacons and elders, follow this seat to the conference hall and respectfully await the sect master coming out of seclusion." The numerous disciples immediately took action. More than 100 disciples consciously lined up in the square in front of the palace. More than 20 deacons and elders entered the conference hall and stood in 2 rows, waiting for sect master Shui to come out of seclusion. Everyone was busy for about 15 minutes before they neatly lined up in formation. At this time, a dazzling golden light soared into the sky from the bottom of Sunless Peak. Swoosh! The sacred and dazzling golden light flew into the sky and illuminated hundreds of miles like a scorching sun. Then, the golden light slowly landed on the peak of Sunless Peak and flew into the conference hall. Whether it was the disciples in the square outside the conference hall or the elders and deacons in the conference hall, they all clearly saw 2 figures in the golden light. Therefore, more than 100 disciples outside the conference hall knelt on the ground and respectfully shouted in unison, "Welcome the sect master coming out of seclusion." The elders and deacons in the main hall also bowed and shouted in unison, "Congratulations to the great success of the divine skill, sect leader." The dazzling golden light slowly faded and 2 figures, one old and one young, appeared clearly in front of everyone. The 2 stood at the head of the conference hall. On the left was a white-haired woman, the sect master of the Hidden God sect, Shui Ruyu. Standing beside her was a handsome young man in a white robe, Ji Tianxing. Shui Ruyu's gaze swept across the conference hall before she nodded slightly to the elders and deacons. She said in a dignified tone, "Everyone, please rise." "Thank you, sect master." The elders and deacons responded, and then raised their heads to look at Shui Liu and Ji Tianxing. A day ago, in the eyes of the elders, Ji Tianxing was a bastard who plotted against the hidden god sect and trespassed into the forbidden area. He was guilty of the most heinous crimes. At this very moment, Ji Tianxing was traveling together with Shui Ruyu. Furthermore, he was standing beside her. Their relationship seemed to be very harmonious and close. The elders and deacons looked at Ji Tianxing with a look of disbelief and embarrassment. Shui Ryu turned and walked to the head of the conference hall. With the help of Ji Tianxing, she slowly sat on a luxurious and dignified throne. Then, she said in a dignified tone, "I have been cultivating in seclusion for dozens of years. I have been concentrating on comprehending the divine art, but I have never succeeded. Recently, Ji Tianxing came to visit me on the orders of the human race's emperor, so I took this opportunity to come out of seclusion." The elders and deacons were stunned when they heard her words. Their faces were full of astonishment and suspicion. "Sect master, didn't you achieve great success in the divine art? You caused a heaven and earth anomaly just now." The first elder, who was the leader, couldn't help but ask Shui Ruyu. The other elders and deacons nodded in agreement and looked at Shui Ruyu with puzzlement. Shui Ruyu was also stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled and explained, "How can it be so easy to comprehend a primordial soul cultivation technique? I have only been in seclusion for dozens of years. How could I have mastered the divine art? As for the heaven and earth anomaly just now, it was caused by little junior brother successfully refining the divine cauldron." Hearing this, the elders and deacons in the hall were even more dumbfounded. Their expressions became more and more interesting. "What? The heaven and earth anomaly has nothing to do with the sect master? Little junior brother? Who is the sect master's little junior brother? Could it be young Master Ji? Oh my God! Sect master and young Master Ji have such an unimaginable relationship?" Chapter 1340. Shui Ryu's words made everyone dumbfounded, completely unable to make heads or tails of it. Ji Tianxing just stood beside the throne with a calm expression. He didn't say anything and didn't explain anything. Shui Ryu looked at everyone calmly and explained in a serious tone, "I know that everyone will find it hard to understand and believe, but Ji Tianxing is indeed my junior brother. This matter is very important. It involves the past thousands of years ago and the original intention and purpose of establishing our sect. It is our sect's biggest secret. Today, I have gathered everyone to reveal the secret of that year and announce an important decision in front of everyone." Shui Ryu paused for a moment. Her expression and aura became even more serious and dignified. All the elders and deacons also stared at her without blinking. Their hearts were filled with anticipation and urgency. 10,000 years ago, there was a shocking earthquake in the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. Endless earth fire gushed out from the ground and covered the sky, burning tens of thousands of miles. Shui Ryu's voice sounded in the hall and lingered in everyone's ears. Her tone was low and solemn. Everyone was very quiet. They held their breaths and listened attentively. Following Shui Ryu's narration, the corresponding scenes appeared in everyone's minds. They imagined the situation at that time. After a full 7 minutes, Shui Ryu told everyone about the origin of the Heavenly Dipper Godfire Cauldron and the origin of the Hidden God Sect. Of course, she only briefly mentioned that she was a disciple of the Kenshin and had a relationship with Ji Tianxing. All the elders and deacons showed an expression of sudden realization. Everyone finally understood that there was such a shocking secret hidden under Sunless Peak. There was actually a divine artifact of the sect. No one would have thought that the Hidden God Sect was a secret force under the imperial court of the human race. What was even more unexpected was that Shui Ryu was a disciple of the Kenshin, and Ji Tianxing was the successor of the Kenshin. There was actually such a relationship between the two. In this way, even though Ji Tianxing was the youngest person in the hall, his status was second only to Shui Ryu. He was incomparably honorable. Many of the elders and deacons recalled the scene when they had scolded Ji Tianxing and felt ashamed, their faces burning. In particular, the two white-haired old men lowered their heads with flushed faces, not daring to look at Ji Tianxing's expression. Ji Tianxing could not guess the complicated feelings of the crowd, so he remained silent. He stood beside Shui Yu, silently communicating with and nurturing the Big Dipper god fire cauldron. At this time, Shui Yu said in a dignified tone, "Since everyone has understood the meaning of our sect's existence, I will now announce a piece of news. According to His Majesty the Monarch's order, now that the great army of the devil race is sweeping across the world, the situation in the Tianxian land is already chaotic, and our people are in imminent danger. At this critical juncture, His Majesty the Monarch has entrusted Ji Tianxing with a heavy responsibility. He has entrusted the divine cauldron to him so that he can wield the divine cauldron and protect our people. As the subjects of the imperial court, our sect should also step forward bravely in this critical juncture to save our people and support the human race. I hereby announce that from today onwards, the Hidden God sect will be entrusted to Ji Tianxing. We must obey his orders and assist him in fighting against the devil race. From this seat down to the disciples, servants, and odd-job workers of our sect, no one disrespects him. No one is allowed to disobey his orders." When Shui Yu's dignified voice spread throughout the main hall, a formless, mighty divine aura burst forth from her body and engulfed the entire hall. Everyone was stunned by this news. Their hearts were beating wildly, and their faces were filled with disbelief. However, everyone was intimidated by Shui Ryu's dignified aura. No one dared to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction, let alone say the word no. Everyone lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. They shouted, "We will obey the sect master's order." Shui Ryu was satisfied with everyone's reaction. She nodded with a gratified expression and added, "Of course, Junior Brother G is usually busy and has no time to manage the sect's affairs. The sect's affairs, big or small, will still be managed by this seat. As long as Junior Brother G has any important decisions or orders, this seat and the sect will follow them without delay." All the elders and deacons bowed again with a solemn expression and said in unison, "We will obey the order." Shui Ryu turned her head to look at Ji Tianxing beside her, indicating for him to say a few words. Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a calm tone, "Elders and deacons, the news that Sect Master Shui announced just now was the order of His Majesty, the Emperor, and also her intention. However, there is no need for everyone to be nervous. The Hidden God sect will still be the Hidden God sect. We will still stay on Sunless Peak and continue to conserve our strength. The only change is that when I lead the army to fight against the Devil Race's army, everyone will travel with me and fight side by side." His explanation was simple and easy to understand. All the elders and deacons immediately understood, and their nervous mood eased a lot. After he finished speaking, Shui Ryu announced the end of the meeting and waved her hand to dismiss the elders and deacons. More than 20 elders and deacons left the hall in groups of 2s and 3s with complicated feelings. They discussed the matter as they walked. Only the great elder and second elder stayed behind to report the situation to Shui Ryu and deal with some sect affairs. Ji Tianxing also bowed and bid farewell to Shui Ryu. "Sect Master Shui, I have successfully refined the divine cauldron. You have also announced the news in public. My purpose for this trip has been achieved, so I will not impose on you any longer." Seeing that he was about to leave, Shui Ryu urged him to stay. "Little junior brother, you have just refined the divine cauldron and your situation is not completely stable yet. To ensure that nothing goes wrong, you should rest in the sect for one night. It won't be too late to leave tomorrow." The great elder and second elder also spoke in agreement and urged him to stay. "Young Master Ji, you have come in a hurry. Our sect has not yet received you properly and has been impolite. How can you leave in such a hurry?" "Yes, young Master Ji and Lord Sect Master have met. How can you not spend some time together? Moreover, if you're going to lead the sect in the future, you should take this opportunity to learn more about the sect. Unable to refuse such hospitality, Ji Tianxing could only nod and agree to stay one more night in the Hidden God sect and leave early the next morning. Soon, the news spread throughout the Hidden God sect. The entire Hidden God sect knew that the white-robed youth Ji Tianxing, who had just arrived the day before yesterday, was actually the continent's #1 genius and the sect master's little junior brother. Moreover, after the sect master came out of seclusion, he personally announced that he would entrust the entire Hidden God sect to him. From today onwards, the Hidden God sect would be under his command. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The entire Hidden God sect was in an uproar. Everyone was indescribably shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. The most excited person was none other than Shi Zhongjian. When he first heard the news, he also did not dare to believe it. He was stunned for a long time before he reacted. When he recovered from his shock, he was so excited that he danced and laughed towards the sky. He was extremely proud of himself. Chapter 1341. For the entire night, the Hidden God sect was bustling with noise and excitement. The elders, deacons, and disciples are still discussing what had happened and Shui Ryu's announcement. Originally, everyone had been living in seclusion and did not understand the situation in the outside world. They had never heard of Ji Tianxing's reputation and deeds. Now that he had suddenly become the leader of the Hidden God sect, the process was like a legend and a myth. Everyone was shocked and curious. Countless people were discussing and inquiring about the origin of this legendary peerless prodigy, or his glorious deeds and past. Apart from Shi Zhongjian, no one could answer. Naturally, this warm-hearted and talkative fellow was surrounded by countless disciples. They crowded around him like stars surrounding the moon as they fought to ask him about Ji Tianxing's deeds. Even the deacons and elders would pretend to pass by casually just to hear more stories and news. Because Shi Zhongjian and Ji Tianxing had known each other for a long time, they had gone on adventures and fought side by side. He was Ji Tianxing's good friend, and thus became the object of admiration and envy of countless disciples. Even the deacons and elders in the sect became more and more polite to him. Shi Zhongjian looked neither arrogant nor impatient, but he knew that this was the honor and pride that Ji Tianxing had brought to him. At night, Shui Ryu was busy dealing with the sect's affairs. Ji Tianxing stayed in his residence to rest. He was silently nurturing and observing the divine cauldron. The Big Dipper Godfire cauldron had been refined by him and turned into a finger-sized black cauldron that was quietly sleeping in his mind. After I refined the divine cauldron swallowed the underground magma ocean completely. The magma ocean disappeared, and the temperature within a few thousand miles of Sunless Peak dropped to normal. I don't know if this is a good or bad thing. I hope that the spirit vein of the Hidden God sect will not be destroyed after I take the divine cauldron away. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself, feeling a little worried. Now he had 3 divine items in his mind. In the middle was the golden divine soul sword. Above it was the heaven-mending pearl, and below it was the black Big Dipper Godfire cauldron. With his half-step primordial soul realm strength and the 3 divine items, his combat strength had already reached an extremely formidable level. He only wanted to return to the central state as soon as possible and report to the Emperor. Then, he would understand the situation of the Devil Race army and rush to the battlefield as soon as possible to fight against the Devil Race army and experts. Although he did not know the situation at the border, he could understand that the situation on the continent was getting worse and worse. Every day that passed, the danger of the Middle Continent would increase by a little bit. Countless human warriors would die on the battlefields. After I report back to the Celestial Emperor, I will investigate the situation of the northern battlefield and rush over to provide support as soon as possible. With my current strength, whether it's suppressing the Devil Army or resisting a Devil Commander powerhouse, it's all very easy. When I find a suitable opportunity, I will summon Xiao Wentian, Emperor Yi, and Sect Master Shui to assist me in killing the Devil Emperor. Then, we will be able to break the attack of the Devil Race. Ji Tianxing silently calculated in his heart for a while. After making up his mind, he closed his eyes and began to cultivate. The night passed in silence. The next morning, when the sun had just risen, he got up and left his residence. He met with Shui Ryu alone, brought Shui Ryu's reply to the emperor, and quietly left the hidden god sect. Facing the rising sun, he rode the little black dragon and soared high in the sky, rushing as fast as lightning toward the central state. The little black dragon was focused on hurrying. He sat on the back of the black dragon, refining the heavenly dipper godfire cauldron. Any magic treasure required a martial artist to constantly refine it to increase the power of the magic treasure. This allowed the martial artist to communicate more smoothly with the magic treasure and use it as they wished. Of course, a divine sword like the Sword of Burial of Heaven that had an artifact soul was not included in this list. 4 days passed in the blink of an eye. The little black dragon flew non-stop for 4 days, not knowing fatigue. It was currently afternoon, and the sun was warm and genial. White clouds lazily floated in the blue sky. The little black dragon was flying in the air above a lofty and steep mountain range. On the ground stood dangerous peaks that were thousands of meters tall. The birds and monsters that lived in the mountain range were all low-level monsters. They did not dare to show themselves, let alone harass or attack the little black dragon. Everything was calm and tranquil. But in front of them, a fierce gust of wind suddenly blew over, filling the sky with black clouds that rolled over. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding several hundred li was covered in thick black clouds. The warm sunlight was blocked out, and the surrounding light turned gloomy while the temperature rapidly dropped. The little black dragon keenly sensed that there was a hint of blood and death in the air. It raised its head to look at the black clouds, then narrowed its eyes and sent a message to Ji Tianxing. "Old Ji, we've probably encountered trouble." At this time, Ji Tianxing had already sensed that danger was approaching. There was no need for the little black dragon's reminder. He had already ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. He stood with his hands held behind his back, a fierce gust of wind blowing over his face, causing his white robe and his long hair to flutter in the wind. He frowned, killing intent flashing through his eyes as his lips curled into a sneer. "I smell the aura of the demon race, and it's a demon commander at the soul refinement realm. I really didn't think that those damned demon bastards would intrude into the heart of the continent and come here." As he spoke, there was a flash of black light in his hand, and the Sword of Burial of Heaven appeared. Gripping the Sword of Burial of Heaven, he expressionlessly said, "Little black dragon, they've clearly come for me. Since we've encountered them, why don't you stop and greet them? It just so happens that I've only just gained control over lightning and refined the divine cauldron. So some blind demons have come to throw their lives away. How can I let down their good intentions?" The little black dragon hurriedly slowed down and stopped high in the sky. The black clouds in the sky grew thicker and thicker, crazily surging. In 10 short seconds, the boundless black clouds had sealed off an area of 100 li, forming a pitch-black domain that suppressed Ji Tianxing and the little black dragon. The little black dragon calmly hovered in the sky, calmly observing the situation, not the slightest bit worried or panicked. Ji Tianxing proudly stood on the dragon's back, expressionlessly looking forward. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, 3 dark red beams of light flashed through the pitch-black, demonic clouds. 3 pitch-black figures 1 zhang tall stepped out of the demonic clouds and stood 1,000 zhang in front of the little black dragon. Ji Tianxing's pupils contracted as he stared at the 3 demons. They were 2 male demons and 1 female demon. The female demon and the man in black armor stood on the left and right sides respectively, looking like attendants. The leader of the group stood in the middle, a middle-aged man in dark red armor. This person's body was as sturdy as a bear's, and he had a single eye on his forehead. He had 6 arms and 4 wings on his back. His single dark red eye stared at Ji Tianxing as a cold sneer appeared on his ugly and savage face. Chapter 1342. Hearing the familiar voice of the one-eyed devil, Ji Tianxing's brows gradually relaxed, and the sneer on his face became even more pronounced. He coldly stared at the one-eyed demon and sneered. "Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, you bastard. I was going to the northern desert to kill you myself. I didn't expect you to come to me yourself. That saved me a lot of trouble." Without a doubt, the one-eyed demon with 4 wings and 6 arms was the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. There was a man and a woman beside him, who were his followers. They were both level 8 Sky Origin Stage Demon Kings. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander's single eye was glowing fiercely. He shouted, "Ji Tianxing, it has been a year since we last met. You little bastard, you are still so arrogant. Could it be that you've forgotten the pain after your wounds have healed? Could it be that you've forgotten the time when you were chased by this marshal and fled like a stray dog?" Ji Tianxing was not angry. He just coldly stared at the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. In his opinion, since the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander dared to show up, he was going to die here. Why would he get mad at a man who was going to die? "Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, 1 year ago, I was no match for you. However, things are different now. Today, I will chop off your head with my own hands to avenge you." Ji Tianxing held the sword in his hand. He was emitting a powerful and overbearing aura. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander sneered and said, "You little bastard, how dare you say you can kill Ben Shuai? How shameless. You probably don't know that Ben Shuai spent half a year looking for you all over the land. He wants to kill you and take your Kin-Shin bloodline." Ji Tianxing finally realized that the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander had planned this all along. He glanced at the Sky Barbaric Demon Commander and secretly released his soul power, which spread out in all directions to see if there were other demons nearby. "Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, you are so arrogant to break into the land and search for me. You must have someone to rely on. There's no need to hide anymore. Quickly show yourself so that I can deal with all of you together." He suspected that the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander had helpers, who must be even more powerful demons. However, he didn't find any clues or traces after searching the surroundings with his soul energy, causing him to become even more vigilant in his heart. The Sky Barbarian Demonic Commander sensed that he was searching the surroundings, so he did not waste any more words with him. He immediately drew out a palm-sized, pitch-black demonic saber as his entire body surged with killing intent. "Little bastard, you're too arrogant. There's no need for that venerable one to act. Ben Shuai can kill you, skin you alive, and pull out your tendons." As soon as he finished speaking, the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander held his demonic saber and roared angrily. Then he swung his sword and unleashed a blood-red light that blotted out the sky. Thunderbolt, Devil Kill. A 300-meter-long blood-red blade light appeared out of nowhere. It tore through the dark night like a thunderbolt and instantly arrived in front of Ji Tianxing. Instantly, the pitch-black night sky within a 5-kilometer radius was illuminated by the dazzling bloody light. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander's attack was fast and ruthless. He had used all of his strength as soon as he attacked, and the power of the blade light was terrifying. However, Ji Tianxing did not take it seriously at all. He took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and slashed at the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. Swoosh! A giant white sword with purple lightning in it tore through the night sky and slashed at the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. Bam! The blood-red blade light and the white sword light clashed in the night sky with a loud thud. Instantly, the blood-red blade light exploded and shattered into pieces of blood-red light that filled the sky. The power of the white sword light did not diminish at all. It instantly hit the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, who had yet to react. Bam! As a muffled sound was heard, the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander was sent flying by the white giant sword. He let out a shrill cry. The dark red armor that he was wearing was shattered into pieces by the giant sword, turning into a pile of scrap metal. His chest was also slashed open, and a large amount of black devil blood spurted out, revealing his ghastly white bones. Even his mouth and nose were spurting out some demonic blood. He looked extremely disheveled. The 2 demon lords, one male and one female, were swinging their swords aggressively, trying to attack Ji Tianxing from both sides. Suddenly seeing such a scene, the 2 of them were stunned on the spot. Their eyes widened in shock, revealing a deep sense of fear. They had never thought that the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, who was extremely powerful in their eyes, would be so weak in front of Ji Tianqing. The two of them had only exchanged one blow, and the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander was sent flying with severe injuries. This was simply too terrifying. The two of them could not imagine how powerful Ji Tianqing was. With their abilities, what right did they have to attack Ji Tianqing? Just as the two of them were stunned, Ji Tianqing waved his left hand and shot out two blinding white sword lights. Swoosh! Swoosh! The two white sword lights that were 1,000 feet long pierced through the night sky like lightning and attacked the two of them. The two of them were instantly filled with fear, and their eyes were filled with fear and despair. They only hesitated for a moment before they turned around and ran desperately. They only wanted to get out of this realm and hide as far away as possible. After all, a battle of this level was not something that the two of them could participate in. In fact, they were not even qualified to watch the battle. However, the two white sword lights had locked onto their soul aura. No matter where they ran, they would not be able to escape. Bam! Bam! In the next moment, the white sword lights hit the two of them, and there were two loud thuds. The burly bodies of the two demon kings were killed on the spot by the sword light. They exploded into pieces that filled the sky, and a large rain of blood fell down. Ji Tianqing did not stop after killing the two demon lords. He swung his divine sword and chased after the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander had just retreated 1,000 feet away and finally stopped. He quickly performed a secret skill and used the power of the Dark Realm to suppress his injuries. Luckily, Ben Shui was prepared and had the crimson armor to protect him. Otherwise, Ben Shui would have been cut in half by that sword. Damn Ji Tianqing. I haven't seen him for a year. How did his abilities reach such a level? Even Ben Shui is no match for him. Is his abilities comparable to the Demon Commander's? These thoughts flashed through the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander's mind. He was filled with fear and disbelief. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing charged over with murderous intent. Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, it's time for you to die. You had an upper-grade soul weapon to protect you just now, so you could still survive. Let's see how you're going to survive this time. Ji Tianqing shouted coldly. He swung the Burial of Heaven again and stabbed the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. Stab! Swish! A cold light that was condensed to the extreme burst out from the Dark Heaven's Burial sword and disappeared in a flash. In the next moment, the cold light traveled 10 miles and appeared in front of the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander's chest. It exploded. Bam! A dazzling white light exploded like a mushroom cloud, rising into the air and illuminating the area within a radius of dozens of miles. Chapter 1343. Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, a dazzling ball of white light soared into the sky of the dark domain. Violent shockwaves spread out in all directions, sweeping across a radius of 100 li as they viciously battered against the walls of the dark domain. However, the dark domain was unbreakable, still releasing a powerful suppressive energy that sealed off the area for 100 li. A few moments later, the dazzling white light that blotted out the sky gradually dissipated. The Heaven Barbaric Demon Commander's figure had vanished. His fleshly body and soul had already been blasted into smithereens and dissipated between heaven and earth. The dark domain gradually calmed down. Ji Tianqing stood alone in the darkness. The battle was already over. However, he did not relax. He maintained his vigilance and wariness as he released his soul to search the surroundings. At this moment, something strange happened in the night sky 20 li behind him. The little black dragon remained in that part of the night sky, vigilantly observing its surroundings. However, a giant claw condensed from black light suddenly extended out of the darkness and silently descended from the sky, viciously swiping at it. By the time it sensed the danger and wanted to turn and flee, it was already too late. Bang! The giant black claw viciously slammed into the little black dragon with a dull thud. The terrifyingly great strength caused its body to twitch, and countless of its bones let out crisp cracking sounds. It fell from the sky and viciously slammed into the ground. Boom! A giant crater appeared in the ground that had long since been reduced to rubble, sending dirt and stone flying into the air. Cracks appeared all around the crater like a spiderweb. The little black dragon lay at the bottom of the crater, more than half of its body buried in dust. The parts of its body that were exposed were bent at strange angles. It was obvious that even its dragon bones had been broken. There were also many places where its dragon scales had shattered and fallen off, revealing bloody wounds and white bones. The little black dragon had suffered significant injuries. It struggled several times before it managed to crawl out of the crater. At this moment, the giant black claw hidden in the darkness silently appeared above the crater and viciously swiped at the little black dragon. The little black dragon had nowhere to hide and was about to be struck by the giant black claw. At that time, its injuries would be even more severe, and its true dragon body might even be destroyed. At this critical moment, a crescent-shaped sword light that was thousands of feet long suddenly tore through the dark night sky and slashed at the huge black claw. "Don't be so arrogant, demon." As the blazing white sword light slashed down, Ji Tianxing's furious roar filled with killing intent resounded. Boom! The huge crescent-shaped sword light struck the huge black claw with a loud bang, which shook the 9 heavens. Boom! The huge black claw shattered on the spot, disintegrating into tens of thousands of blood-red fragments, scattering in the sky. Ji Tianxing flew over as fast as a streak of light. He flew to the top of the pit and unleashed a huge golden palm, grabbing the little black dragon out of the pit. "Little black dragon, how are your injuries?" He was filled with worry as he sent a sound transmission to ask about the little black dragon's injuries. The little black dragon hurriedly replied in a rather weak voice, "Old Ji, there's no need to worry about me. I won't die. Be careful." Ji Tianxing nodded and hurriedly put it back into the sword world. "Rest at ease and recover. I'll deal with this demon." At the same time, the fragments of black light in the sky began to dance like butterflies, rapidly gathering together. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With a flash of black light, the fragments of black light once more condensed into a savage monster that was thousands of feet tall. Its appearance was that of a primordial beast. Its body was thick and muscular. Its head as flat as a python's, and it had a wide and bloody mouth. It had 4 thick limbs and a long dragon tail. 2 pairs of black wings had also sprouted from its back. This was a massive magical beast whose name was unknown. It exuded an extremely powerful aura and was shrouded in a layer of dark green light. The most terrifying thing was that its strength had reached the half-step essence soul realm. Ji Tianxing held the sword of burial of heaven and stepped into the dark night sky. He stared at it coldly and thought to himself, could this black giant demon be the supremacy that the sky barbaric demon commander mentioned? It actually has the strength of an essence soul realm. No wonder it could severely injure the little black dragon with 1 claw. However, since when did such a powerful being appear in the demon race? He knew very well that other than the ancient demon emperor, Demon Commander Ming Yi was the strongest. However, Demon Commander Ming Yi's strength had not reached the half-step essence soul realm. The black giant demon in front of him was far more powerful than Demon Commander Ming Yi, and he was unfamiliar with it. The black giant demon stood in the night sky. Its body seemed to have fused with the darkness, becoming faintly discernible. Its huge red eyes stared at Ji Tianxing. Its bloody mouth opened and closed, emitting a bone-chilling voice. "Ji Tianxing, you don't know me, but I've long heard of your reputation and deeds. I've long wanted to tear you into pieces. In order to kill you with my own hands, I left the northern desert and crossed the entire Tianxian continent to find you here. Tonight, you will die without a doubt. There is no escape." The black giant demon's voice was as cold as 10,000-year-old ice. It was emotionless and sounded like the voice of death from hell. When Ji Tianxing heard its words, he frowned and pondered for a while. Suddenly, a thought flashed across his mind. In the demon race, other than the ancient demon emperor, who else dares to call themselves emperor? Could this guy be the ghost emperor? He knew that before the ancient demon emperor returned to the northern desert, the demon race had split into several forces. One of the more powerful forces was the thousands of demon tribes led by the ghost emperor. 1,000 years ago, the ghost emperor was a demon commander under the ancient demon emperor. His status and strength were higher than demon commander Mingye's. However, 600 years ago, the ghost emperor fell out with demon commander Mingyi and the others. He established his own force, roped in many experts and tribes, and called himself the ghost emperor. Until 2 years ago, when the ancient demon emperor returned to the northern desert, the ghost emperor had no choice but to obey the demon emperor's orders. When he thought of this, Ji Tianxing came to a sudden realization. He stared coldly at the black giant demon and said in a low voice, "You are the ghost emperor who established his own force." The black giant demon nodded and said coldly, "That's right. You guessed my identity so quickly. It seems like you know a lot about my race. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be victorious in every battle." Ji Tianxing sneered and said in a playful tone, "If not, how could I sneak into the heavenly demon palace and escape the northern desert alive?" The ghost emperor also sneered and exuded an endless chill of death. "Since you know so much about my race, you should know that the purpose of my visit is for the Kenshin bloodline." Chapter 1344. Of course, Ji Tianxing knew that the ghost emperor was determined to win this time and would definitely not leave the matter at that. However, he was fearless. With his left hand behind his back and his right hand holding the sword of burial of heaven, he exuded a domineering aura. If this was a few months ago with your strength, you might have been able to get what you wanted. But now, I'm sorry. Not only will you be disappointed, but you will also lose your life. The ghost emperor instantly opened his bloody mouth and let out a cold and sinister laugh. "Ha ha ha! The rumors are indeed true. You little bastard are truly arrogant to the point of being out of control. Since you are so stubborn, then this emperor will personally kill you and extract your bloodline. 10,000 ghosts kill gods." After saying that, he twisted his body and flapped his 2 huge wings. Then green light covered the sky and covered the earth. Tens of thousands of green dots of light fell from the night sky. Then each light spot emitted a dazzling green light and turned into a terrifying ghost face the size of a house. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. On the desolate land that was like a wasteland, countless white skeletons appeared. In just a few breaths, tens of thousands of tall and terrifying white skeletons appeared in the dark realm, forming a sea of white skeletons. Ji Tianxing looked around and saw that each of the white skeletons was crystal clear. Their bones glowed like jade and were filled with powerful energy. Tens of thousands of skeletons were holding weapons made from blue soul flames. They flew up into the sky and charged at Sioux, Quebec. Without a doubt, those tens of thousands of white skeletons were not ordinary skeletons. They were all elites who had been refined by the Ghost Emperor and had the strength of Sky Origin Realm. No one would be able to withstand the attacks of tens of thousands of Sky Origin Realm elites. They would definitely be torn into pieces. Only the Primordial Soul Realm elites had a chance of survival. Under the Ghost Emperor's control, the tens of thousands of white skeletons and tens of thousands of terrifying ghost faces swarmed towards Ji Tianxing like a swarm of bees, immediately drowning his figure. Ji Tianxing, enjoy the feast of despair and death. Hee hee. The Ghost Emperor stood in the dark night sky and looked down at the battlefield with a smug smile. Ji Tianxing was in the dark sky, completely submerged by the white skeletons and ghost faces. He was surrounded by skeletons and ghost faces from all directions. All kinds of blue soul flames and dark green flames were pouring over like a flood from the sky. His entire body lit up with dazzling golden light, forming a magic power shield. Furthermore, the golden light shield was surrounded by dense purple lightning. which looked like electric snakes slithering around it. Whenever the blue soul fire and the dark green flame came in contact with the shield, they would be blocked and shattered by the lightning. Then, they would turn into a torrent and spread in all directions. Ji Tianxing also swung the Burial of Heaven sword, slashing out streaks of lightning-infused sword light that wildly hacked at the surrounding skeletons and ghost faces. Bang, 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 bang. A series of muffled booms erupted, reverberating madly in the dark domain, deafening to the ears. Countless white skeletons were shattered by the sword light, shattering into countless bone fragments that rained down from the night sky and onto the ground below. Even the ever-changing ghostly faces were twisted and deformed by the lightning arcs, collapsing and dispersing one after another. Although those white skeletons and ghost faces could not hurt Ji Tianxing in a short period of time, there were too many of them. However, there were simply too many of them. There was simply no way to kill them all. Therefore, Ji Tianxing opened the exit of the Sword World and summoned Ancestor 3 Absolutes, the Jinshan King, and Xinyu to fight side by side with him. As soon as Ancestor 3 Absolutes appeared, he was surrounded by dozens of white skeletons. All kinds of blue soul flames formed saber light, sword light, and fire pillars that blotted out the sky and covered his body. He was furious and immediately summoned the body of the green light treasure tree, releasing tens of thousands of sharp green light blades that shot wildly in all directions. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The tens of thousands of sharp green light blades were as dense as a torrential rain of arrows, instantly shattering the surrounding white skeletons into pieces. The area within a radius of 10 miles was instantly cleared by him, becoming empty. His body quickly grew, turning into a towering ancient tree that was thousands of feet tall, extending hundreds of millions of branches, standing tall in the dark night sky. White skeletons and ghost faces from all directions madly rushed over, besieging him. He waved hundreds of millions of branches, fiercely whipping those skeletons and ghost faces, smashing those skeletons and ghost faces one after another. Then, the Jinshan King rushed out with his dark golden warhammer. Seeing the skeletons and ghost faces in all directions, he roared angrily and madly waved his dark golden warhammer, smashing those skeletons and ghost faces without restraint. Huge golden hammer shadows that were as large as mountains fiercely smashed those skeletons and ghost faces, making loud, muffled sounds. But all the skeletons and ghost faces that were hit by the hammers were destroyed without exception. Qianyu's method was even more violent. She directly revealed her 1,000-foot-long heavenly fox body, releasing shocking hurricanes, ice, and lightning, stirring up a shocking storm in the sea of skeletons. With the help of the crowd, the sea of skeletons and ghost faces that filled the sky rapidly reduced the number of skeletons and ghost faces. Ji Tianxing also continuously slashed out dense sword light, waving his palms to release waves of lightning, quickly destroying those skeletons and ghost faces. In just 20 breaths, the tens of thousands of white skeletons and ghost faces were wiped out by the crowd. Witnessing this scene, the Ghost Emperor frowned, his eyes becoming extremely gloomy. Despicable little bastard, he has the help of so many soul-refining realm powerhouses. No wonder he can live until today. The Ghost Emperor murmured in a cold tone, his body surging with soaring murderous intent. He released a powerful divine soul power, controlling the entire dark realm, crazily accumulating power. The white skeletons scattered in the dark realm, as well as various blue and dark green soul fires, all turned into a flood of colors, gathering in his body. When his power was accumulated to the peak, he roared with murderous intent. Ji Tianxing, go to hell. As he roared, he opened his mouth and spat out a blue and dark green pillar of fire, descending from the sky toward Ji Tianxing. It was a huge pillar of fire that was 100 feet thick, containing a terrifying power that could destroy one's divine soul. Ji Tianxing immediately swung his sword, slashing out a crescent-shaped sword light, fiercely toward the pillar of fire. Swing the sword. Bang! The sword light slashed at the fire pillar with a loud bang, producing a dull and loud sound. The pillar of fire immediately collapsed, exploding into a large number of blue and dark green soul fires, spreading in all directions. Old Ancestor 3 Severing was closer to the tree. The 3,000-jong tall tree was immediately infected by the soul fire. Over 100,000 branches were set ablaze. The Golden Mountain King and Qianyu were also affected, being engulfed by the mysterious and terrifying soul fires. Immediately, they showed a painful expression, letting out muffled groans and screams. Chapter 1345. Ji Tianxing's expression changed when he saw that Patriarch Sanju, Golden Mountain King, and the others were injured. He immediately understood that this was the Ghost Emperor's scheme. The Ghost Emperor's target was not him, but Patriarch Sanju, Golden Mountain King, and the others. As expected, the Ghost Emperor opened his mouth again and spat out 3 more soul fire-light pillars towards Golden Mountain King and the others. Swish! 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 The 3 soul fire-light pillars were extremely fast. They pierced through the night sky like lightning and arrived in front of everyone. Patriarch Sanju, Golden Mountain King, and Qianyu were unable to dodge and were about to be engulfed by the soul fire-light pillars. At the critical moment, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate to use his secret technique and summoned the 7 astral soul magic swords. Swish! The 7 astral soul magic swords flew out and immediately turned into blazing white giant swords that were hundreds of feet long. They slashed towards the 3 soul fire-light pillars. At that moment, the astral soul magic swords were extremely fast. They tore through the night sky like white lightning and caught the Ghost Emperor off guard. Bam! 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 With a few dull explosions, the 3 soul fire-light pillars were slashed apart by the astral soul magic swords. They exploded into soul fire and scattered in the dark night sky. This time, Ji Tianxing was prepared. Before the soul fire could engulf the green light treasure tree, he put Patriarch Sanju into the sword world. Then he used his fastest speed to save Qianyu and Golden Mountain King. Everyone's astral soul was injured. Although it was not fatal, they still needed to recuperate in time. After Ji Tianxing sent them into the sword world, they immediately began to recuperate. In the Dark Realm, only Ji Tianxing and the Ghost Emperor were left. It was proven that martial artists below the Primordial Soul Realm could not interfere in the fight between them. Only they themselves could determine the final victor. Swish! 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 The 7 blazing white astral soul magic swords flew back to Ji Tianxing's side and floated behind him. Every astral soul magic sword was dazzling white light. They emitted powerful astral soul energy and sharp sword intent. The Ghost Emperor stared at the 7 astral soul magic swords and observed them carefully. Suddenly, he had an epiphany. 7th tier soul cultivation realm? 7 swords condensed from divine souls? Didn't all human experts condense their divine soul dharma eyes? This damned bastard. What kind of evil cultivation technique did he cultivate? He actually managed to condense 7 divine soul swords? That's not right. That little bastard is only at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. Why is his battle prowess so strong? The more the ghostly emperor thought about it, the more astonished he felt. Ji Tianxing didn't care about its shock. He unleashed all of his power and used a secret technique. Soul Slayer. His left hand formed hand seals and manipulated the 7 swords to form a 7-star sword array, which pressed down on the Ghost Emperor. Swish swish. The 7 divine soul magic swords instantly expanded, transforming into giant swords of white light that were over 1,000 feet long. They even transformed into tens of thousands of white sword lights. The profound and complicated 7-star sword formation was instantly formed. It covered a radius of 10 miles and suppressed the ghostly emperor within it. Swish! Swish! Millions of sword lights flickered intensely as they shuttled back and forth in the night sky, frantically trying to strangle the ghostly emperor. Within the sword lights, there were purple lightning arcs that crackled incessantly. Lightning was the world's most masculine and ferocious power. It was also the nemesis of evil spirits. On the other hand, sword lights were the sharpest and most powerful power. They could penetrate and cut through the ghostly emperor's body and soul. The power of this soul slayer was pushed to the extreme by Ji Tianxing. Even a first-level essence soul realm expert would have to be wary of it. The ghostly emperor was in a perilous situation and was in imminent danger. The speed of the sword lights and lightning was extremely fast. However, the ghostly emperor's body was as huge as a mountain. Being suppressed within a radius of 10 miles, it was extremely difficult for him to dodge. Bam! 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 Following a series of explosions, numerous wounds appeared on the ghostly emperor's majestic body. Demonic blood splattered everywhere. Furthermore, countless lightning arcs struck the ghostly emperor, leaving countless pitch-black wounds on its body. Black smoke rose from the wounds. The excruciating pain made the ghostly emperor tremble as it roared furiously. The ghostly emperor immediately channeled a vast amount of dermic powers and condensed a blue shield to block the attacks of the sword lights and lightning. The ghostly emperor even waved its huge claws with all its might and used its ultimate secret techniques. It shot out various soul fires and sword lights in a vain attempt to break through the 7-star sword formation seal. The 7 stars sword formation continued to attack the ghostly emperor. Rumbling sounds could be heard from within the sword formation and reverberated in the dark realm. After about 100 breaths, the power of the 7-star sword formation gradually weakened. Only then did the ghostly emperor have the opportunity to break free. He finally broke through the 7-star sword formation, causing the thousands of sword lights to collapse and shatter into fragments that scattered across the night sky. Ji Tianxing hurriedly controlled the 7 astral soul magic swords to fly back to his side and disappear into his mind. The ghostly emperor roared furiously. He struggled to break through the fragments of sword lights that filled the sky and return to the dark realm. At this point in time, he was already riddled with wounds, and his injuries were extremely miserable. His entire body was covered with thousands of wounds of different sizes. One of his 2 pairs of wings had been crushed. A large piece of flesh on his back had also disappeared, leaving only a rugged skeleton. Even the top of his head had been charred black by the lightning and was filled with charred holes. Ji Tianxing, you bastard! You deserve to be hacked into 1,000 pieces. I will tear you into pieces and grind your bones to dust. The ghostly emperor was infuriated. He had completely gone mad and had gone berserk. He roared and cursed hysterically. In the past 600 years, he had never suffered such miserable injuries. With his terrifying strength, almost no one could beat him to such a state. He stared at Ji Tianxing with bloodshot eyes. His eyes were burning with a raging blood fire. The monstrous anger in his chest exploded as if he wanted to burn the heavens. Heavenly ghost chasing sun. The ghostly emperor opened his bloody mouth and roared into the sky. Immediately after, his entire body was burning with blue soul fire. His body was also twisting and changing violently. In a short span of 10 breaths, his gigantic body had shrunk from 1,000 feet tall to 1,000 feet tall. His appearance had also undergone a huge change. From a ferocious ancient beast, he had become a giant burning with blue flames. At this point in time, he was 1,000 feet tall demon with a body as thin as a bamboo pole. His entire body was blue and green. He no longer had legs. His body floated in the night sky. However, he had grown 4 long bamboo-like arms. His black nails were as sharp as blades. His head was also covered by his long purple hair. There was no way to see his face clearly. Only a pair of green eyes could be seen through the messy hair. His body became a little blurry. It was as if he was real and illusory. This was the legendary demon that was comparable to an Azura, the heavenly ghost. The heavenly ghost chasing sun was the ghostly emperor's forbidden technique. Once this technique was used, his combat strength would increase exponentially. For an hour, he would be comparable to a first-tier essence soul realm expert. However, Using this forbidden technique would consume 100 years of his cultivation and greatly damage his vitality. Unless he had no other choice, he would not use this secret technique.